Sleepy town settled for the night, where every lawn is tailored just right. And it's about time that the back porch light comes on. At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street. We got a lot to cover today.
We do. We're going to dive right in. Let me get my...
Yeah, I added a couple little things, but I saw you had a lot, so I was like, I'm just going to take a back seat on this one.
I hope it's in some kind of semblance of order that makes sense, but who knows?
Whatever. I only added some like book stuff, so
Perfect.
yeah.
Impeccable. We haven't had a good impeccable in a while.
Let's all take a collective breath.
Feel like a piece of garbage today.
Oh, my zip. No, my face.
No, I gotta invest in some of those patches. Do those work?
This is just a Band-Aid. I just cut one of the off.
I like the ones that are like little teal stars or hearts or, those little patches.
I saw, who's it, Millie Bobby Brown on the Ellen show. She had one on recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's that on her face? And she like went makeup free during that interview. And I guess because she was like breaking out, so she like didn't put any makeup on, but she had like a little thing on her face. I was like, I guess, is that for a zit? Like what? I've never seen the cute ones. I was just like, I just cut Band-Aids and put them on my face.
I get you some cute ones.
Yeah. This started as a blackhead, and then I'm really bad. I squeeze them, and then I pick at them, and
Oh, gross.
and then it turns into this, and then I'm like, well, I shouldn't have done that. Well,
I'm the same way. It needs to be smooth. I don't want any little thing. So when I get the breakouts, I'm like, it drives me nuts. It's something about the texture that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, it's annoying. Yeah,
smooth it out.
And there were two like right next to each other, so it felt like Braille on my face.
Ouch.
Yeah, I got the little one, and then this one just got bigger. So
you got the baby, and the mama got angry.
Yeah, she was like, "Fuck you, bitch!"
Vengeance.
Yeah, and then it turned into like a big white head that I was able to pop yesterday, but then it came back. So I'm just gonna let it do its thing and
good to your skin.
Yeah.
You using like the toner?
I put like an alcohol pad on it just to get rid of the bacteria because like I popped it, so I wanted to disinfect it. So I just dabbed that on and then threw this on.
This is such a not auditory. This is like a nightmare for people. Have you ever tried the trick of taking like a liquid Tylenol?
No.
You know, the liquid trick, and you poke a hole in the liquid Tylenol and you use that. That shit works.
To make it like not red or
to make it like go away.
Oh yeah, I guess that would work. It takes away the inflammation probably, right?
Yeah,
so I'm 40 years old and still don't know how to take care of my skin. So
that's the only reason I got on birth control. I was like, why looking at 30? Why do I still have acne?
I'm taking pointers from a 12-year-old on how to take care.
Right.
I told you Molly has
your skin.
She's got a fucking skincare fridge in her room on her desk.
I love that.
I'm just like, these didn't even exist when I was your age.
We had the those pads that just they were like Clorox pads that just stung.
I remember those.
Proactive.
Yeah, I remember using those for a little bit. Yeah, skincare has come a long way since our day. No more Bonnie Bell. Now these kids are wearing like
Bonnie Bell
high-end shit that I've never heard of. So
no glitter. There's no glitter inside any of these products.
No.
And you can't eat it either, Jessica.
Is that what her name is? Wait, who?
I don't remember. What's her name? The woman who was her name Jessica?
From what?
She had a line of body care that you could eat. Jessica Simpson.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Anyway, hey, Witch Hey.
Hey, Witch Hey. I'm Justina.
I'm Christina. Welcome to Magnolia Street, your one and only musically inspired practical magic fandom podcast.
Every week, we deep dive on different aspects of the movie and the books, as well as shit. As well as treat your ears to our very own practical magic inspired original music. This is going to be an episode.
I think it's going to be really giggly off the rails. We just got the giggles today.
Oh my god.
Well, and at recording this, it is Happy Ostara.
Happy Ostara, that's right.
That's probably why.
Recording Tuesday the 19th, March 19th.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but this week coming off the heels of Valentine's Day.
Wait,
is that right?
No. No,
I
Valentine's
don't
Day
know.
was a month
Oh,
ago.
you know why I wrote that? Because I did these notes right at 4 to come out for Valentine's Day. But
That's
anyway,
fair. Okay.
we're talking today about the blood, specifically blood pacts, blood oaths, and blood rituals, blood magic in general.
Yeah, we wanted to do this one for a while, right?
Yeah.
So this episode will include discussions of human sacrifice and some disturbing themes, so please keep that in mind if you're sensitive to these matters, and perhaps choose one of our other episodes for this week.
Yeah.
Trigger
Yeah.
warning.
But we're going to start off with the film and then we'll dive into the books. Do you want to take the film away?
Oh, sure. So, Practical Magic, the movie. So, one of the prominent and memorable scenes in the film is that of our Owen sisters' blood oath, or their pact, right? As Gillian is preparing to elope and run off into the night, she and Sally stand on their balcony and exchange an emotional goodbye. The whole my blood, your blood, our blood. What does she say? We're gonna be two old biddies with all these cats. We're gonna die
Yeah.
in the same day. That was their
Promise.
blood pact, right? Yeah. They do this with a pocket knife, by the way. Like,
That guy does not look like a clean man.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know about that. First of
Mm.
all, if you're gonna, do these kinds of blood packs, make
Be
sure
safe.
you disinfect. Be safe, be smart, right? What Christine
That's
always
right.
says. Be safe, be smart. And then it kind of circles back around, right? At the end of the film, the pact comes back into play when Sally has to save Gillian from Jimmy's possession during the exorcism scene. And that's the one thing that kind of brings Gillian back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh,
Gravity.
back to reality, right? That brings her back to this plane of existence, back to her own body, and then kind of tells Jimmy to go fuck off so that, Gillian and Sally can continue their blood pact because they were meant to die on the same day, because that's what Gillian said when they cut their hands and slapped their palms together.
It's kind of like when Cher smacked, who was it? She's like, snap out of it. And she hits him. Who is that?
Who?
Nicolas Cage?
Did she slapped him?
I don't remember what movie this is, but yeah, it was the full circle moment of the movie for the Practical Magic movie.
Yeah.
And the caveat or the plot hole is they're already blood related, but I think this just was solidifying and maybe putting a little bit of comfort for Sally, like, I will be in your life always.
A verbal reinforcement, because they're young and Jillian's gonna go off and do whatever the fuck she wants, and their parents already kind of abandoned them, so I'm sure Sally's feeling this sense of abandonment, like, oh, now my sister's leaving me too.
More alone than ever before, because that was her only friend, her first friend.
Right. And everybody else on Maria's island ostracized them, so who does Sally have now besides the aunts? Like, imagine being stuck home with your two crazy aunts. I'm sure.
And that's it.
Yeah,
it's like COVID.
Exactly.
Imagine COVID.
It's like she's in quarantine.
But nobody's calling, nobody's Zoom calling you, nobody's doing drive-by waving.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Right. And this was way before she had her apothecary shop, right? She's a lot younger at this point. She doesn't have kids, so she really doesn't have anybody else. She doesn't even have the girls at the apothecary shop, Carla and Linda. So we think, we don't know if she's friends with them at this point, right?
Right. And this is pre-email, pre-cell phone. So the only thing is to pick up the phone and call, which we know Gillian is not great at doing, or sending the letters back and forth, which they do. And that's like Sally's lifeline, especially when Michael dies.
Yeah.
But even Gillian's kind of shit at that also, because she moves all the time.
Right.
That's how Gary gets his hands on that letter to begin with.
Yeah. So I think that the blood oath, even though they are blood related, and maybe it is a little bit of, I don't know if you call it a plot hole, but like they are blood related, so they didn't really need to do that. But I feel like the verbal reinforcement, Gillian cut their palms and said those things with the intention that, no, we are meant to die on the same day. We're going to end up these two old biddies with all these cats. That's our intention for the rest of our lives together. Maybe not now, because I need to go off and explore, but eventually that's what's going to happen. And then she, in turn, Sally made sure that was going to happen, right? When she, reminded her at the end of the film and kind of reopened those scars,
Exactly.
the whole thing happened, and just reminded her, no, we're supposed to die. You said we're going to die on the same day. So, bitch, that's what's going to happen. Jimmy, you need to leave.
Yep.
Because you're not invited to this kitty cat party, okay?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
When you said opening those old wounds, it's almost like they went through this whole upheaval of their lives, of initially starting with it just being them, thick as thieves. They were the only thing that they had. And they grew up, they had loves, they had kids, and then their life went to shit because of the unexpected.
Yeah.
Just like in our lives, sometimes you got to do that shadow work. You have to open up those old wounds in order to move forward and banish the malevolence back into the grave.
Order of malevolence. 100%. Yeah, I think it was a very poignant moment in the film because, like, you could just tell their bond and their love for each other transcends time and space, even throughout the entirety of the film when they were apart. So it just reinforced
because
that,
they could feel each other through that telepathic connection almost.
Yeah.
Like, ow, my hand hurts, remember?
Yeah.
That was just their way of maybe letting each other know they felt them.
Right.
I'm trying to make a new folder.
Yeah, I didn't read too much of like what you have in the notes for today, but I just real quick wanted to also bring to light the parallel of like they are witches, they are women, they're connected by blood, not only through their DNA, but also as women, we all share this weird innate ability to sync up on our moon cycles when we're hanging out too much together. Like it's so fucking weird. Like it's so inherently witchy in and of itself. Like just sharing that connection of like going through a menstrual cycle every month and just sharing that bond with other women and just like knowing like, you know, you walk into a girl's bathroom in a bar, you just whisper to the girl next to you, hey, you got a tampon? And she's like, don't worry, girl, I got you. It's like it's like this like girl code, like, you know, it's
but they're also gonna be your best hype girls.
Right.
They all hype you up. And
it's an unspoken bond.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's an unspoken bond that we all have with one another, and it's pretty cool, right?
It is cool.
It's so weird, but and like guys will never understand it, and like we have that like one up on them, like you know?
It's very, very witchy. I think there's a little bit about like menstrual blood in a magical practice, maybe in the next episode. Not too much on this one, but we can always expand it, I guess, because I didn't even go into the blood mysteries. I don't remember what episode it was where you and I talked about the different phases in a woman's life relating to the different phases of the moon and her blood cycle.
Yeah.
If you remember, let me know. But
okay,
it was in another recent episode.
Which episode it was, but yeah. So I thought that was just an interesting, a funny parallel.
It might have been Spinsters.
Oh yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah. So go check that out if you want a little more on that, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, guys, this is going to be a two-parter episode, right? So we have today's episode, which I guess will focus more on like the book, movies stuff, and like I don't know what we have after.
We
that.
have like a little bit of like the history of like what a blood brother or blood sister is, TV tropes, and around the world rituals, cultures, things like that that utilize this kind of blood ritual stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then spinning off from this episode, we're actually gonna do another song-a-sode. We actually wrote a song called Blood Oath, so that's coming up too. So in the next couple weeks, it's gonna be a lot of blood talk, so I hope you're not squeamish, and you have been warned, so trigger warning now.
Yeah, but in lieu of that, this is going to be a little song bite. So this is Justina performing Blood Oath, and this will be a little sneak peek for after this two-part series. Here you go.
I cut into my flesh, you were my very first best friend. Our hands we clasped together. This night smells just like pennies now. My blood, your blood, it's only us forever. I bet we even die on the same day. Just history to show me. Why do you have to go? This is our blood oath.
Yeah, so Gillian slices her palm. She says, my blood. She slices Sally's palm. She says, your blood. They clasp hands. They say, our blood. As Sally repeats her in a whisper, our blood, right? They hug, and which I'm sure we've talked about this in one of our past episodes. It looks like Gillian has her hand on Sally's back, but somehow managed to not get blood on her robe, right? And I think we talked about that on the Goose and Trivia episode.
Yes, and I did want to plug our shirt over on our Teespring. It's a picture of a pocket knife, and it has some roses next to it, and it's the Latin that Aunt Franny says.
Di te perdante te maledico?
Yes, and it says Hex the Patriarchy on it. So there's some shirts and tank tops and hoodies over on our Teespring if you want to go check it out.
Yeah, so they embrace. Jillian jumps down from the balcony, hops on this weirdo guy's, random guy's back. They laugh into the night, and Sally, hears the laughter disappear into the night. End scene. That's the inspiration for the song-a-sode we have coming up. You have a Blood Oath story that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I had this experience because, of course, so obsessed with this movie, and at the time I had a best friend that we were Sally and Gillian. I've talked about this on the show. Go check out our Patreon. You can get the whole story over there. So this friend and I decided one winter evening, because we were feeling witchy as fuck. We had watched the movie. We were working on the Book of Shadows. We were planning out all this stuff, and we decided we wanted to do a blood pact.
Oh.
So we went outside. We got all bundled up. We must have been 13, you know?
Oh
Yeah. And we went across her street. She lived in like a cul-de-sac, pretty suburban neighborhood, but it was like a winter night. And I remember across the street, there was this big like ditch, like we would sled down. So we got it all bundled up. She got her knife because of course she like collected knives.
Yeah.
We sledded down to the bottom of that and we made it like this whole to do. So she did her hand first, like pretty dang good. And then I was trying to do mine, but I chickened out and I couldn't do it. So I gave the knife to her and she did it for me. So we did our blood pact and we kind of said the same thing. And then we packed it with snow to get the blood to stop. And we went inside afterward just feeling like, oh my God, so cool. And we're going to be like connected all our lives.
Yeah.
Who knows? And she had one of those old camcorders that the side flipped out. And it had like the little screen.
Yep.
So we make home movies and shit. So we were recording our afterthoughts on there. And it was one of those, like, there's no editing. You kind of just add on to the last thing you recorded. We were just recording, like, we just made a blood pact. This is how we did it. I don't know how close to the timeline this happened, but we were watching like the little home movie we made, and at the tail end this popped up and her dad was watching it with us, and he heard us say that we had done this already. He was not happy. He was like, that's how diseases are spread and that is not safe. Don't do that. Don't ever do that again. He was so mad.
Oh my
God. But what was done.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time. The thing is, that shit does not leave a scar.
No.
It didn't for me. Maybe because the knife was not dirty enough. You know,
Okay.
maybe you need that bacteria.
Yeah, or maybe you didn't cut it. Maybe it wasn't cut deep enough.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But I think that part, especially that part of the hand, you're using it. So why don't use somewhere else? It's just was not a smart place to do it.
Do you remember if it like took a while to heal? Like, did it?
Yeah, I think it did. And like writing. I don't remember what hand we did it. Probably the left hand because we were both righties. So we were trying to think ahead like smart little 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
But sadly, that relationship dissolved. But I still have that in the back of my mind of like, I'm still connected to this person. And that was a conscious decision as a stupid little kid.
Yeah.
Tie yourself to somebody. Blood is very important. And we're going to talk about what blood is thicker than water means a little later on. Yeah. But that was my story. My embarrassing childhood story.
I had other questions.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. So you guys both watched Practical Magic, and that's where you like got the inspiration to do this from?
Yes.
So when like you're just sitting there randomly in class when you're writing and it was like hurting, your hand was throbbing because there's probably bacteria in it. Were you more like romanticizing it like, my hand is hurting. We're thinking of each other right now.
100%.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. Like if we ever caught our kids doing that, right? Like it'd be like,
oh my gosh,
what's wrong with you?
Yes.
What was wrong with us, right?
I don't know.
I remember I saw The Craft, early teens, like 13 years old, and that came out, well before Practical Magic did. I didn't see Practical Magic till I was like a senior in high school. So 13, I was like really like young and impressionable.
Totally.
So when I saw The Craft, that scene when they're like sitting in the woods and like they all prick their fingers and they like put it into like the wine cup and they're like praying to Manal or whoever the hell they're praying to. We didn't go as far as like pricking our fingers, but like that scene, I always loved that scene so much. Like when they're sitting in the woods and just like, chanting and sitting in a circle around all their witchy stuff.
It's beautiful.
I would like pack all my like witchy stuff and go off into the woods like in the back of my house because back then we used to have a big wooded area back there, and we just used to just sit out there and chant and like do all that stuff. Yeah, but I remember like seeing them like drip the blood into the cup. I would always be like totally grossed out by that. I was like, ew, why are they
You're drinking blood, guys?
Yeah, so that always kind of like put me off. But everything else about that scene I loved. But I think it's just all the fear mongering my mother did growing up. So I was like, playing it safe. I never went full force with the whole blood thing, but I probably very well could have. Like, I was a young and impressionable 13-year-old. Who's to say, like, what we would have done if, our mothers didn't, stand behind us over our shoulder, like, don't do that.
Absolutely.
So,
I do love that scene because it's so, like, you got the butterflies and the sun, and they're just connecting with each other. And that, I think, is, like, a very, not the only, a very realistic depiction of what witchcraft is. You're just sitting out in the sunshine with your friends, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's I don't really have a Blood Oath story, but that's the only thing that I can remember as a kid that I was like watching a lot and, taking in a lot. But I never went as far as like actually doing the whole blood thing. But your story is so funny.
If I could do it over, I would not.
Does your palm ever hurt randomly?
It doesn't. Sometimes it gets itchy, and I know money's coming. When your palm gets itchy.
Yeah, but not the scar one, not the scar hand.
There's no scar.
Well, the inflicted one.
The emotionally inflicted scar sometimes flares up.
All right, maybe it's cut then. Maybe the bond has been broken. The bond has been broken. There we go.
All right. Take us into the books, I guess.
There's not that much here for the book. So we're going to start off with Practical Magic, and this is on page 13. So this says, once someone had made the decision to come to the back door, she was more than ready to drink pennyroyal tea, prepared with ingredients that couldn't even be spoken aloud, which would surely bring on a bleeding that night. She'd already decided to let one of the aunts prick the third finger of her left hand with a silver needle, if that's what it took to get her darling back once more. And to bring on a bleeding that night, I'm pretty sure they're talking about an abortion, right? Because doesn't pennyroyal tea, that's the kind of effect that it has. So
yeah.
Also a Nirvana song. Did you ever hear the song Pennyroyal Tea?
I think that was an honorable mention. I think in one of our very first WMSRs, we talked about that. Yeah.
I think you're right. So that was it for book 1 for Blood Magic. That was it.
Not a lot of blood.
All right. So then in Rules of Magic, this is on page 53. What mattered was the blood that ran through him, the same blood that had flowed through Maria Owens. Once when he'd cut himself in a tangle of brambles on the way to the lake, drops of his blood had burned through the fabric of his shirt. This was what bloodline magic was. It was inside him. Was that talking about Vincent?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. This next one is on pages 57 and 58. The grimoire contained instructions on how to craft talismans, amulets, and healing charms. Some formulas were written in ink that was specially made from hazelnuts or madder. Others were written in the writer's blood. Next is Book of Magic. This is the last book in the series. This is on page 17. Franny Owens was in her 80s, but her hair had a red tone. And although people whispered she had dyed it in a salon in Boston or magicked away the gray with a mixture of blood and potent herbs, all it took to keep the color was a rinse of madder root every once in a while.
Is madder root red?
I don't know.
Itself?
I guess so. Let's see.
Okay.
Madder root. Yeah, it's like a red powder. It looks kind of like a dragon's blood powder.
Cool.
So I guess that's how remember we were like wondering in a recent episode we just recorded how, like why her hair was like red was coming out of her hair if she was a natural redhead.
Right. Yeah, in the rain it said like it would ring out red. And it's maybe because she helped just to enhance it a little with some madder root. That might have been what's coming out.
There it is. That madder root powder. Okay. Next one is on page 36. This is about Jet. It says she deposited this grimoire behind the loose bricks, mixing in 3 drops of her blood to seal the mortar, well aware that some things should stay hidden until they were meant to be found. For the knowledge this book held was so dark, it was intended for a reader who possessed the ability to handle its power. On page 71, Vincent wore reading glasses now, which galled him. He was old, but he remembered how young men's blood burned when he read the notes from his grave. I am ruined by love, someone had scrawled in blood. I'm still trying even though I'm burned to ash, wrote another, quoting from the song Vincent produced when he was love-struck and confused about his fate. Page 107. Everything worthwhile is dangerous. Kylie slipped the book into the pocket of her raincoat. She could feel it there, as long as it had a beating heart, a story written in blood. Pages 130 to 131. And this is about Kylie. She recited her vow to do what she must, cutting her hand with a corkscrew left atop a tiny, foul-smelling fridge and adding her own blood to the fire. When thick beads of blood, so dark they appeared black, spilled into the mixture, the smoke billowed a brilliant red. Kylie ran to open the window and waved her arms to disperse the crimson swirls. The smoke would leave its mark on the ceiling, so the next guest would wonder what on earth had happened, never knowing that in this small room, the door to left-handed magic had been flung open on an ordinary day.
I love two things about that. The first one is that is so like reminiscent of probably every witch has like accidentally smoked it up a little too much and you just like, boo, we gotta get this house aired the fuck out. And secondly, the stain on the ceiling that somebody wrote fuck in your house.
Yeah, like I don't know when that could have possibly happened
That's so funny.
because I see that spot, that stain all the freaking time, and it wasn't until me and Avi were talking about it that I looked at it and I was like, somebody wrote fuck in that stain. Somebody wrote fuck in that grease.
That's so funny.
It's so freaking weird. Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, so that was it for Book of Magic. Now we're going to talk about magic lessons. This is Maria's story. So technically this should be the first book in the series, right? If we're going chronologically. So page 11. From that warm and cozy spot, she watched Hannah scan the pages of her book, filled with remedies and spells, careful to take note of the potions and powders that were prescribed. Amulets of apple seeds and menstrual blood. Doses of henbane that could bind a couple together. Or, if used to excess, could cause delirium or death. Page 15. When only a babe, she cut her finger on a thorn bush, and the blood that spilled onto the ground had burned through the grass, turning it black. So keep that in mind. That's like the first mention of the blood turning black. Page 19. For love, boil yarrow into a tea, prick the third finger of your hand, add 3 drops of blood, and give to your beloved. Page 20. Charms for wandering husbands, feather, hair, blood, and bone.
I'm going to go back to your page 19 about adding 3 drops and give it to your lover. This brings me back to the placenta thing where I don't remember what celebrity it was, but they served their placenta in some form or another to their family without the family knowing. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't serve any of your body without consent.
Yeah.
Please and thank you.
That also reminds me of, did you ever see The Love Witch?
No, I really want to. I haven't seen that.
I saw it a really long time ago and I only saw it once, but I think she like kills this man that she's like hooking up with or something like that. And then she like buries him on the property that she killed him at, first of all, so that's freaking stupid. But then she like Jimmy Angeloved him, right? Like,
yeah, sure.
But then she like made a witch or spell jar with tampons and she just left it there at the site.
That is your DNA, you dum-dum.
Left it there.
Yay.
That's all I remember about that movie. I was like, oh, the tampon movie. So, page 24. In their village, women turned away from the doctor, for he had never been to school and believed in bloodletting and using stones and petrified wood to discern both the illness and the cure. Page 27. Wrap a red candle on which his name and yours is written on red paper, soak in dove's blood, and burn through the night. Page 43. Spells for revenge or survival in which the spellmaker's own blood was used as ink to ensure that only she could read the words. A couple more on page 43. Black magic, red magic, blood magic, love magic. Rebecca divided both the world that she walked through and the world that was unseen into these categories. And lastly, also page 43, a pin and a poppet, a vial of blood, a bird bled to death on the hearth. All of it was in her book, brought to bear when deemed useful.
I wanted to say that I didn't add anything about bloodletting or like the humors too much, maybe a little bit later on, but I feel like that, I mean, that was a form of science or healthcare back in the day, but we all know that was a bunch of witchcraft bullshit. I don't know. Do you think I should add any of that to our part 2? Bloodletting, getting the devil out?
We can, yeah. But in layman's terms, real quick, can you just explain what bloodletting is?
So either 2 things. It's tiny little cuts to extract a certain amount of blood or using leeches to draw out blood.
And they said that this, back in the day, they thought that this would extract a demon or like
or
bad evil energy.
I guess we could talk about the humors the next time because it was always like a balance. Like if you were too cold, you wanted the hot. If you were too dry, you needed the wet kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we can talk about it the next time.
So it's more scientific and less spiritual, or did it have some spirit?
No, it's a bunch of woo.
Okay.
It sounds bananas.
Bunch of woo. Well, if it's bananas, then I definitely want to talk about it.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So one observation that I wanted to mention is that in the books, magic lessons anyway, Maria's story, right? Alice talks a lot about how Maria and Faith bleed black. On page 193, it says, already the metal cuffs had drawn blood on Maria's wrists, black blood that was burning through the wooden floor. And on page 267, it says, Martha, the woman who kidnaps Faith from Maria, Martha grabbed Faith's hand and surprised her by stabbing her with a small paring knife she used to cut down the stalks that now lay in shambles. 2 drops of black blood fell onto the ground, burning through the grass. It's still inside you, Martha cried when confronted with this sight. After all she had done to save the child, the girl was still tainted. So Faith and Maria both bled black.
I don't like that. It's still inside you. It's weird.
Right? Well, she was a fucking weirdo, right? Yeah. That Martha Chase, she was a fucking weirdo. We know that Faith and Maria bleed this black because it's this magical bloodline, their magical DNA. So after acknowledging that, I was wondering if there were any mentions of the Owens women bleeding black, especially in the first book, the Practical Magic book, because as we know in the movie, when Sally and Gillian do the blood oath and they cut their palms, the blood is in fact red. Like we see the blood, it's red. So yeah. I was wondering if this was something that was mentioned in the first book, but maybe they didn't feel like it was necessary to portray in the film. But I did go through the first book looking for mentions of black blood or bleeding black or anything like that, and there was no such thing. So I think this was a characteristic that Alice decided to give the Owens women later on when she decided to continue the series. So that was okay. Yeah, so that was the only observation that I was able to make. I was like wondering like why was the blood red in the movie if the blood in the books is black, but there was no mention of black blood in the first book, so that's probably why.
I wonder if there was like a real reason why that change was made, because is there a scene in which like, oh, she bled blood and that's how they knew she was a witch? Or bled black.
Not in the first book.
Okay, so in the other ones, was there an instance of that happening? Like, why did it need to be in there at all, I guess?
Right. I don't know. I think because magic lessons, if we're going chronologically, there is the mentions that I just read of the black blood from Faith and Maria, and it was attributed to their magical bloodline. So
okay, that's like a dead giveaway.
The black blood.
Yeah, like they didn't need to go and hang Maria. They could have just like remember the prickers.
Yeah, because that page 193, I think that was. It says the metal cuffs had drawn blood on Maria's wrists. So whoever was holding her captive should have seen that black blood and been like, what the fuck, right?
Yeah, like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Well, I don't remember because I didn't copy and paste the whole passage. So maybe that is attributed to why they threw her up on the gallows. Okay. I don't remember 100%.
Interesting.
But yeah, so both Faith and Maria had the black blood in that first book. Well, third book, right? There was the third book that was released, but first book chronologically.
Right.
But it was written many years later, like 20 plus years later after the first book was even released, which the first book was what the movie was about. So it's understandable why they didn't, I guess, use that characteristic in the film because it didn't exist in the first book. So it makes sense. But I'm just like wondering, like why like years later down the line did Alice decide to all of a sudden throw in this characteristic, you know?
It probably could have been left out in my opinion, but
right.
Whatever, because they're magical as it is.
Yeah,
they don't need to be supernatural beings. They're magical beings,
right? And I think that's why we all love the first book so much, because it was so practical, right? It was about finding that magic in the mundane, just like seeing the magic around you and making magic out of the resources you have in your everyday life. And I think that's why we all really love that first book and the film. So I agree. Like, I think things maybe got a little too magical, supernatural toward like, the later books. Right, exactly. That was everything in the books. So
okay. So I think we see blood oaths, maybe even blood magic in TV and movies more than we think sometimes. So let's talk about the trope for a minute, and this is from the tvtropes.org. So with blood and sacrifice being powerful magic in some of the oldest tales, a very old Greek curse was for a witch to run 3 times around a house she wished to curse while menstruating, especially potent if it was her first period.
Oh,
I did not know that. That is dope.
Do you remember your first period?
No.
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. All right. So story time. Okay.
Story time. Pause.
Story time. So I was a gymnast, right? Growing up. So I was very active and, I was always running around, beating up boys, all that stuff. So me and my brother used to have these wrestling matches, just like,
because you're a badass bitch.
Right. We used to just beat each other up. That's what we did. We were wrestling and my stomach started hurting so bad. I didn't know what it was. I thought I ate something. I didn't know, I don't know what the fuck it was. I never felt a pain like that in my life. And, Italian household, my parents never fucking talked to me about that shit. Did your parents talk to you about that shit? I never got the birds and bees. Never
think
got
I've
the
heard it
birth.
more from my cousin and like the friends at school.
Right. Yeah. I would always like hear stuff from my aunts. My aunts would always be like, "Oh, just wait till you get your period." Like they would tease me about it. And like I would do the whole earmuffs thing to myself like la la la
La
la
la
la.
la la
I
la
don't
la.
want to hear it. I don't want to know. I
Yeah.
was grossed out by it. I was just so grossed out by it. So that night, my stomach, it was hurting so bad. By the way, I was a late bloomer. I was like 14 at the time. 14.
But also being so active and fit throws
Right.
off your cycle, right?
And I think that's why I got it so late. But I know my mom got it. She was a late bloomer too. And I know that they say you like follow in your mother's footsteps. Like it's kind of hereditary. Like when you get it is like when your mom got it. I don't know if that's a myth, but it happened for me. So I'm not
Okay.
sure if it was true for me. So my stomach was hurting. And then I remember going to the bathroom later that night and I wiped and it was like brown, like, you know, that dried blood.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I shit from my vagina.
Woo, what a relief you did.
I told my mom, and she was like, "Bitch, you just got your period. Shut up."
Oh, indeed.
She's like, "Here's a pad. Shut up. You're fine."
That's so funny.
I'm like, I cried. I was like, I don't want to have my period.
Oh,
It was traumatizing. And let me tell you, that first period that I got, I had my period for 2 fucking weeks. 2
Woo.
weeks.
Yikes. It was backed up.
I was a late bloomer. Like it had 2 years worth of bleeding to like just flush out.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
I remember being jealous that my friend, the Blood Oath one, got hers before I did because she was younger than I was. And I was like, what the fuck? And I think I told this story on here before, but I must have been in like 5th grade, 6th grade maybe, and went to the bathroom with the like bully girl in my class. And I always try to sweeten up the bullies. I was trying to be on the good side because I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
We were in the bathroom stall and she was like, "Do you need a pad?" And I panicked. I was like, "Yes, I do." I did not because I didn't get my period yet. So I figured out how to put it in my underwear. And it was one of those massive ones, you know, that you got in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I'm waddling back to class and I'm sitting there like, I can hear the crinkle. About 20 minutes later, I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. I raised my hand. So I took that shit out.
Oh my
God. I'll never forget that. The period, don't remember. The pre-period, I remember.
Yeah, I do remember also having a best friend in like, I want to say 6th or 7th grade. She got her. Okay, so I had like these 3 friends. We always like, that was our like crew. My friend got her period and my other friend, they both got their periods on the same day.
Bitch.
And that was like in 6th or 7th grade. I didn't get my period. Well, also I was the youngest one in the class, in our graduating class. So I didn't get my period. I was 14, but I didn't get it till like 9th grade, the end of 9th grade.
Oh, yeah.
So high school at that point. So these bitches had their period for like 3 years by that point, right?
Yeah.
But I remember getting like I felt so left out because they both got theirs on the same day. And I was like, I'm still a child. Yeah.
It's so much more positive for girls now. And I love that like American Girl Doll has a book of like how your body changes and like little illustrations and stuff. It's really cool. When I nannied, the girls had one. But now I think the girls got this, but it's like a like happy period box. What? Like for your first period, you get this box full of goodies and it's like celebrated and they got taken out to dinner like you're a woman. Like super exciting for them. What? That's the way it should be.
Where's my fucking gift card?
I know.
I want that shit
Where's my gift card?
retroactively.
Yeah.
As I'm probably perimenopausal now, like give me my gift card that I should have gotten 30 years ago.
Yeah, our treat is the chocolate or ice cream or the bag of chips or the gas station burger we get ourselves every month. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I could eat a whole friggin' bar of Hershey's in one sitting when I'm on my period. And a bag of potato chips.
Yes.
Give me all of it.
All right, back to the tropes. The spilling of blood is a potent force in the workings of magic. It may be a token of sacrifice, but it can also be the loss of life that fuels the spell. Some blood may be indicated to be more powerful than others, and common types are human blood, monster blood, the blood of a royal, the blood
Monster
of a special...
blood.
Yeah, maybe like the blood of the Minotaur or the blood of the Hydra, you know?
Yeah.
The blood of the innocent is a popular one. A child's blood, the caster's own blood, or this one's more popular to me, like the blood of a virgin, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes only a single person's blood has power and any other blood is powerless. Sometimes it also makes a difference whether the blood being used was offered willingly or taken unwillingly. The other side of the coin is menstrual blood, which is used much less frequently but is associated with life magic when it is used. So, except mages, I guess, who practice blood magic to be portrayed as evil, or at least charcoal gray. I guess, like if you're working the left-handed path a little bit,
Okay.
with possible exceptions made for druid-like nature cults that may be considered amoral. May even overlap with this trope of tome of eldritch lore, which is often written in a man's blood on parchment made of human flesh, which makes me think of Ian and his protective magical words and amulets that he has tattooed on his body.
Right.
And then that leads me back to our tattoo episode with Selena. I did try to contact her for this episode, but she's super freaking busy.
Yeah.
So go check out her episode, which was episode 32. So it is often a cause of a superhuman transfusion. If the blood is caused by making oneself bleed, then it is, I guess, called a self-harm induced superpower trope. There were a ton of little threads. Go check this out.
You could go
But
crazy.
I've also found this really cute article Justina's going to tell us about, but the title is TV Witches, Please Stop Slicing Your Palms Open for Blood Magic.
They're talking to you, Christina.
Exactly. Yes. I don't want to read it. I need to be told. I need to absorb these words.
You need to be reprimanded. Okay. All right. So this article is by Brian Moylan. Is this also from TV Tropes?
No.
Vulture.com. All right, so this says, in the past week, I've seen 3 instances of television characters do something that is disturbing as it is idiotic. The first happened on American Horror Story Apocalypse when Cordelia, played by Sarah Paulson, wrapped her hand around a knife, then pulled it out so a few drops of her blood would complete a spell to raise a witch from the dead. Next, Sabrina Spellman, Kiernan Shipka, did the same move when she needed a little bit of her heart juice to sign the Book of the Beast in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix. And then, in the CW's Charmed reboot, Macy, played by Madeline Mantock, cut her hand the same way to lure a demon with her demon blood. And they say, yes, I get it. Sometimes there is no substitute for the sanguine when it comes to making a spell work, but why exactly does everyone have to slice their palms open in the same ludicrous and destructive way, right? They always go like this.
And they're like holding it. Aren't you cutting your fingers too?
Right, yeah. Yeah, chills. It's even worse than a death by a million paper cuts. No one is going to die this way, but they're going to be stuck with a throbbing gash in the center of their hand for weeks, kind of like Christina did, right? So, how do you even treat a cut like that? It's a horrible place to get stitches. You certainly can't get a bandage to stick in that part of your hand that is always bending and flexing. It's just going to get infected and reopen and bleed every time these witches have to use their opposable thumbs. The greatest non-magical gift that humans were given. This guy's pretty funny. Forget about holding a wand. How is Sabrina going to get her hocus pocus on when she's nurturing a giant scabby palm wound for 10 episodes? But like, it's probably like gone by the next episode, right?
Yeah, totally.
Never talked about again.
Totally.
And that's another ridiculous thing. These gashes always disappear without even a scratch. Maybe it's because they're, quote, magical, right? Never in the next episode, nay, the next scene. Are these magic practitioners even sporting a band-aid? They give up their blood and then it's gone. The crazy thing is, this is not a new trope. Palm slashing for blood magic is so common, it even has its own page on TV Tropes. We see it in Practical Magic. It happens twice in the Pirates of the Caribbean. If it's not in The Craft, then I will be a wicked witch's flying monkey's uncle. It's actually not in The Craft. They prick the finger instead. They don't slice the palm. They were a lot smarter. They were a lot smarter in The Craft.
Yes,
the
agreed.
finger prick goes away a lot faster, right? Yeah, and it doesn't affect the whole hand, right?
The digits are still working.
Right. They say as long as there have been spells in our pop culture, there have been witches willing to disfigure their palms in order to get that blood magic going. It's not just magic that causes people to commit ungodly acts with a blade, though. What about those characters who make a blood oath or do some sort of blood brothers pact? The kids in last year's It remake all sliced themselves with the fist over blade technique at the very end of the movie. Last season on Riverdale, Archie, played by KJ Apa, and Hiram, played by Mark Consuelos, did this when Hiram wanted to initiate Archie into his shady underworld gang. According to some Twitter crowdsourcing, this movie was also featured on FX's Mayans MC, but in order to confirm that, I would have to submit myself to an episode of Mayans MC, and that is not something I am even willing to do in pursuit of critical self-memeing research. I've never even heard of that show. Have you?
What that is.
Yeah. Nah. Why don't we question this very particular and very weird trope? Can't characters start carving up their forearms or something instead? It would be just as easy to get a few drops of blood, and it would be a lot easier to slap some gauze and and a piece of tape over it once they're done with the black magic. Or maybe even inside of the thigh. Sure, it's going to be a lot messier than the hand or forearm, but the wound would be covered with pants so we wouldn't have to stare at it for the rest of the episode. Or worse, pretend like it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
This guy's
exactly.
onto something.
Yeah. Anything would be better than watching someone magical or otherwise dig a knife into their palm like it's a tub of, I can't believe it's not butter. This guy. This fucking guy. Has anyone in real life ever actually done this? Sure. Most of us aren't casting spells or sealing oaths. Except Christina, she does. Though, maybe we should all be aspiring to live lives where that happens more often. But even if we were, wouldn't we find a cleaner, less destructive, and easier healing method than this?
Yeah.
Maybe we should ask Dorinda Medley, the Real Housewives of New York, who actually managed to slice her hand open during a tequila-soaked dinner in the show's 9th season. Not a single spell was cast that day, and we have no idea how long the wound took to heal itself, but it certainly did provide a little bit of television magic. So I'm guessing that Real Housewives moment, that was not supposed to be a magical blood oath type
Accident.
of thing.
Yeah.
It was just an accident, but yeah.
My thought goes to, if you want to do blood magic safely, share it, maybe not have a big mess, go get one of those little things that diabetics use that prick your finger that have the replaceable pin, so you're not sharing any dirty metal between your bodies.
True.
That is my thought.
Right.
Because you get the quick poke and then bloop, bloop,
Bloop, bloop.
throw it away.
There you go. Done deal. Disposable witchcraft. Like it.
Disposable witchcraft. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the saying, blood is thicker than water. This has come up before. Blood is thicker than water, but is it? Really?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the quote.
Okay.
We've talked about this on the show before, but it seems like the perfect episode to highlight it once more. Some of you keen listeners know that the full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." And this can be traced back to the 12th century writings that people have found. It mostly appears in Scottish and Irish contexts, and in some sources it says it is originally a Gaelic proverb. Some claim that the phrase was thought to have had its origins being used during the ritual of an ancient covenant. The phrase can also be seen in some scriptures like Samuel and Matthew, the sacrament of the Holy Communion of Christians, which represents that we are one flesh and one blood because of the bond of the blood covenant with Christ and one another. So it emphasizes the significance of bonds created through shared experiences. I'm getting at the meat of the quote. So say it again. The blood of the covenant, the people around you, is thicker than the water of the womb, the family in which you're born into. So this emphasizes the significance of the bonds created through shared experiences, commitments, and mutual agreements over those based solely on familiar ties. In its essence, the phrase suggests that the relationships we choose and forge through conscious decision can be stronger and more meaningful than those determined by birth alone. This has been so significant this past year for you and me, I think. Yeah. But over the centuries, the original quote underwent a transformation, resulting in more commonly known saying of blood is thicker than water, period. This misinterpretation suggests that familiar ties are inherently stronger and more important than other relationships. However, this contradicts the original meaning, which emphasizes the strength of chosen relationships over biological connections.
Right.
I thought this was an important topic to touch on, especially today, because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that I know Jess and I have talked privately about this before, and some of the people that we've adopted along the way end up being just more genuine support and a kindred love, more so than what we maybe get with some close quote-unquote family. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this definitely has its connection to practical magic in the sense that the Owens couldn't have saved Gillian all on their own. They had to invite the love of their community in to help hold the space for them, and their love as a family is evident. And yes, it does take Sally cutting her palm and reenacting the blood oath from the beginning to ultimately cast Shimmy out. But the visual of the community of women joining their hands in the circle, their heartbeats all shared as one, through their connection coming together, because again, that's my favorite thing about this film. That last line is fall in love whenever you can, to me means that any and all types of love, romantic, platonic, head over heels infatuation, sisterly, brotherly, familial, self-love, whatever. I think the love that we can hold for our fellow human beings says a lot about the love that we hold for ourselves. And sometimes this means choosing that covenant over that familiar tie. So I wanted to just point on that to just solidify. This is one of my favorite quotes because a lot of family arguments end up with like, oh, well, blood is thicker than water. Yeah. That means just school you for a minute. So pull that out of your back pocket next time you hear that from someone.
100%. I've definitely had family members where you think like you should trust them because they are your family, but then like they do this act of betrayal where you're like, whoa, okay, I know where your allegiance lies. So
And they're their own person too, with their own bullshit
yeah.
and their own character arcs. You know, even just because you were born into the same bloodline doesn't give them, I don't know, the authority to treat you like shit.
Yeah. Like you said, we've talked about this before. Like, our bond is probably stronger than like actual family that we've had for years who, like, you know, think would support you the way that, you know, like you think like a family member would support you. And then you're like, wow, all right.
And you know shit about me that not a lot of people know. So just saying.
Yeah. So I think it's all in the company you keep. I don't know.
There was a line from Letterkenny that just wrapped up. That was such a good show.
Yeah.
And I think it was, show me your friends and I'll show you who you really are. So it's like who you surround yourself with. Are they supportive and loving? And the people who want to see you succeed are going to help you succeed. And that's what you told me throughout this whole shebang.
Yeah, it's true. And the people who don't want to see you succeed, they will show their true colors in due time.
True colors.
When it comes down to it, when it comes time to show whether they support you or not, and they do something that you're like, all right, I thought you were one of my biggest supporters, but I guess maybe not. Like,
prove me wrong one more time.
Exactly. So I can't tell you how many times that's happened. And it's made me realize a lot.
Just remember that if you're going through something or really striving for that goal and you don't think anybody's backing you, there are people backing you, right? I don't know where I'm going with this.
It comes from where you least expect it in most cases, I feel like, right?
There it is. Yeah.
Like the people who you thought or you just assumed that they would because like you have a history
or your family.
And that might not be the case. And then you kind of have to rethink all of the people you ever thought actually loved you. It's such a mind fuck, right? Yeah,
and that includes like the sharing of just everyday bullshit that you go through. Like that takes energy. That is your vulnerability, sharing that with that person that maybe doesn't have the space to hold it for you, support that of you. And that kind of puts things in a little different perspective sometimes.
I don't consider myself a high maintenance friend, like, because I'm flaky as fuck too. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back into my cave and then like I'll emerge in like 3 months from now and be like, hey, want to hang out? So I don't consider myself a high maintenance friend. I also don't ask people like for money randomly for no reason, just because I'm broke. Like I don't do that. So like when I actually do come out and say, hey, I need your support, it's like not crying wolf. Like it's like, hey, I actually need your support. And if those people that you thought were gonna support you in that time of need and they kind of like turn the other way, it's like, oh, I thought you were one of my biggest supporters. I guess not. Okay, never mind. Fuck me.
No, fuck me.
Exactly.
No, not fuck you. It's on them. You keep being the golden god that you are.
Yeah, it's just a rude awakening is all I'm saying. Like, you know? Yeah. So it's very tricky to decide where to begin with this sort of history because cultures all over the world had been using blood and blood sacrifices in their practices, and this isn't including full-on human sacrificing, which we're going to try and stay away from. We're not going to talk about that here. However, opening the Pandora's box of blood in magic, ritual, and history will indefinitely lead you right to that door, right? Yeah. We did touch on a little bit of sacrificial offerings in our doves episode. In Genesis 15, a dove is part of the clean animals who are sacrificed to God as a sign of Abraham's covenant with God. But also in that same story, Abraham was going to kill his son. But also in our placenta episode, if you recall, we also had the pleasure of talking to Selena Medina, the owner of Girly Tattoos, in our episode 32, and we learned just how intimate the sacred art of tattooing and its connection to blood really are. And Selena was telling us a little bit about how her as a tattooist kind of now has that blood connection with her tattooee, like the person receiving her ink, right?
Her clients, and there has to be so much trust in that. And I love that she's putting more of that like spiritual tattooing out in the world because you go, we were just talking today. I was like, I want to get another tattoo. And such a flippant thought, not even that you're going to be sitting in a chair with not your life in somebody's hands, but your life essence is in the possession of somebody else that can do whatever the hell they want with their intention. Yeah. So having Selena, so talented and just like the super strong witch that is out for especially the underdog, you know, to hold that safe space for people. She was so cool to talk to.
I don't think before talking to Selena, I don't think I've ever seen tattooing approached so holistically. It kind of like just blew my mind. I was like, well, I never even would have thought that, like, you know, now a tattooist and the person they're tattooing are now inherently blood bonded because they're putting their intentions and their own life force and energy and the stuff that they carry on a day-to-day basis. Like they're inking that into somebody else's skin and transferring their baggage onto somebody else.
Absolutely.
And I love that Selena's like, I make sure I come to my sessions right. Like, she cleanses, she does her meditation. She's in the right mental space to be able to confidently say, I can come to do a session for somebody and feel like I'm not adding to their trauma or adding to the baggage that they carry. I'm coming to them with a cleansing aura that's going to just make them feel refreshed and like the slate is clean and
help heal.
And heal, right? And so healing. So
I want to go listen to that episode now.
that's really cool, her approach to tattooing, and like she just opened my eyes when we talked to her. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I wish we could have talked a little bit more, but man, she is just
Slammed.
like a trailblazer. She's just opening new shops across the South where we live.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Sweet.
Let's talk about blood brothers, or blood sisters, I guess, for that matter. So when I looked this up, blood brother came up more frequently and had more information. So just sub in blood sister if that's what you want. This says blood brother can refer to two or more men, not related by birth, who have sworn loyalty to each other. This is in modern times usually done in a ceremony known as a blood oath, where each person makes a small cut, usually on their finger, hand, or forearm, and then the two cuts are pressed together and bound. The idea that each person's blood now flows in the other participant's veins. All right, so this act, of course, carries the risk of the blood-borne diseases. The process usually provides a participant with a heightened symbolic sense of attachment with the other participant as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to touch on here and there culturally. So the Norsemen, this is going to cover a little bit of the Germanic culture. The Norsemen entered the pact of foster brotherhood, involving a rite in which they let their blood flow while they ducked underneath an arch formed by a strip of turf propped up by a spear or spears. An example is described in the Gisla saga and the Frostbredanra saga. Not saying that right, I apologize, Iceland. The bond of the Thorgrir Havarsson and Thormund Bersason is sealed by such a ritual as well, and the ritual is called the Leikrar. Overord's saga contains another notable account of blood brotherhood. Overord, after fighting the renowned Swedish warrior Halmar, entered a foster brotherhood with him by the turf rising ritual. Afterward, the strand of turf was put back during the oaths and incantations. So that's nice to clean up after themselves. In the mythology of Northern Europe, Gunther and Hogni became the blood brothers of Sigurd when he married their sister Gunrun. In Wagner's opera, Götterdämmerung, the concluding part of it, I don't know. The concluding part of his ring cycle, the same occurs between Gunther and Wagner's version of Siegfried, which is marked by the blood brotherhood leitmotif. Additionally, it is briefly stated in Lokasina that Odin and Loki are blood brothers.
Your cats.
Cool. My kitties!
Are your cats
buy
blood
one, get
brothers?
one. Yeah.
Wait, so you have Odin and Loki. Where did you get Leif's name?
We got him on Leif Erikson Day, so his name is Leif Aronson.
Oh.
There it is. Yeah.
Cute. All right, so among the Scythians, the Covenanters would allow their blood to drip into a cup. The blood was subsequently mixed with wine and drunk by both participants, kind of like from the craft, right? Every man was limited to having 3 blood brotherhoods at any time, lest his loyalties be distrusted.
Oh.
Okay. As a consequence, blood brotherhood was highly sought after and often preceded by a lengthy period of affiliation and friendship. And the 4th century BC depictions of 2 Scythian warriors drinking from a single drinking horn, most notably in a gold applique from Kul Oba, have been associated with the Scythian oath of blood brotherhood. So the Hungarian Hajduks had a similar ceremony, but the wine was often replaced with milk so that the blood would be more visible.
Oh, pink milk.
Pink milk. It's like that Nesquik. Do you ever make the strawberry
like
quick
that.
milk?
Yeah, I like that stuff.
Yeah.
The Scythians is ancient Eastern Iran.
Okay.
So over Middle East.
Got it. All right, we're going to move over to East Asia now. So in Asian cultures, the act and the ceremony of becoming blood brothers is generally seen as a tribal relationship for bringing about alliance between tribes. It was practiced for that reason most notably by the Mongols, Turkic, and early Chinese. In Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the Chinese classical literature, the three main characters took an oath of blood brother. The oath of the Peach Garden by sacrificing a black ox and a white horse, and by swearing faith. Other blood oaths involving animal sacrifice were characterized of rebel groups, such as the uprising led by Deng Moki in the 1440s, of criminal organizations such as the Triads or the Pirates of Lin Doqian, and of non-Han ethnic minorities such as the Mongols and the Manchu. Genghis Khan had an anda called Jamuka. The term also exists in Old Turkic, which means to take an oath, derived from the, quote, ancient test by poison, end quote. The Turkic term, if it's not a loan word in Middle Mongol, is related to Mongol anda. I don't know what anda is.
That Old Turkic phrase, ant ichmek, I think is that to take an oath, but maybe originally the translation was more so a test by poison, perhaps?
All right, that was East Asia. Now we're talking about the Philippines. So El Pacto de Sangre, a romanticized painting of the Sandugo blood compact ritual between the Spanish explorer Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. And I said that more Italian than Spanish. And Datu Sikatuna of Bohol, Philippines by Juan Luna in 1886. In the Philippines, blood compacts, Sandugo or Sandugan, literally meaning one blood, were ancient rituals that were intended to seal a friendship or treaty or to validate an agreement. They were described in the records of the early Spanish and Portuguese explorers to the islands. The most well-known version of the ritual from the Visayan people involves mixing a drop of blood from both parties into a single cup of wine that is then drunk, like the craft.
Totally.
Other versions also exist, like the Palawan, which describes a ritual involving making a cut on the chest and then daubing the blood on the tongue and forehead.
Oh.
This was before pen and paper, guys. Like, this was what people used to seal the deal.
Contractually binding.
Contractually binding, right. Okay, so sub-Saharan Africa. The blood oath was used in much the same fashion, as has already been described in much of sub-Saharan Africa. The British colonial administrator Lord Lugard is famous for having becoming blood brothers with numerous African chiefs as a part of his political party in Africa. A powerful blood brother was the Kikuyu chieftain Wayaki Wahinga. David Livingstone. I could say Wakayi Wahinga, but I couldn't say Livingstone. What the fuck? David Livingstone wrote of a similar practice called Kassendi. All right, so southeastern Europe.
I was going to take this so you could take the history part right after this because it has a lot harder words.
Oh, thanks.
So take this little blip.
Thank you.
You're so good. I don't know how your tongue does not get fucking tied up.
Could've
Even in
said
this, I hyphenated one of the words. I was like, I gotta break this shit up. So, in southeastern Europe, blood brothers among larger groups were common in ancient southeastern Europe, where, for example, whole companies of soldiers would become one family through the ceremony. That's a little sketchy, though. It was perhaps most prevalent in the Balkans during the Ottoman era, as it helped the oppressed people to fight the enemy more effectively. Blood brotherhoods were even common in what is today Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Montenegro, Serbia, and North Macedonia. Christianity also recognized sworn brotherhoods in a ceremony which was known as Greek Adelphopoesis. Adelphopoesis. That's the one I had to split up.
You said that like a Jamaican. Adelphopoesis. Man. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Slavic languages, probatisratimstvo, in Eastern Orthodox churches in Latin. Do you know I get confused? People are always like, oh, are you Eastern Orthodox? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What about me gives that off? I don't get it. I don't know.
People always think I'm either Indian or Spanish. I've also Middle Eastern, like Iranian. Like I've gotten it all across the board. Like I'm a chameleon. I could probably pass for ethnicity.
You blend in
Right.
everywhere. Yeah. So Eastern Orthodox churches and Latin, Odo ad frates facidum in the Catholic Church. The tradition of intertwining arms and drinking wine is also believed to be a representation of becoming blood brothers. There you go. So some famous blood brothers. Justina's going to take us through some of this history.
Okay, here we go. Are you guys ready for all this?
Rapid fire. Say it. It is what it is.
Okay. So in the 9th century AD, chiefs of the 7 Hungarian tribes formed an alliance, drinking from each other's blood, and chose Almos as the leader. In 1066, Robert de Uli and Roger de Ivry, two Norman knights taking part in the Norman conquest of England, were known as blood brothers. It was said that they had agreed beforehand to share profits of this adventure. Both survived the Battle of Hastings and were granted lands in Oxfordshire and elsewhere. They worked together on various projects such as Wallingford Castle. In the 12th century AD, the Mongol leaders Yasuke, father of Temujin, and Togrul, later ally of Temujin, were blood brothers. Temujin is also, I guess, another word for, the native word for Genghis Khan. And,
Okay.
and Jamuka were childhood friends and blood brothers, although Jamuka later betrayed Temujin. Jamuka refused reconciliation and thus was executed at the orders of Temujin.
Whoa.
Yeah, that sucks. That fucking
Well,
sucks.
that's a bummer.
Yeah, oh, bummer. In medieval Serbia, his two blood brothers, Ivan Kosancic and Milan Toplicanin, accompanied Milos Obilic prior to the Battle of Kosovo. In the 18th century AD, emissaries of British King George III and leaders of the Jamaican Maroons reportedly drank each other's blood when conducting peace treaties. Okay.
Adele Populares. I don't even remember how I said it.
Samoan wrestler High Chief Peter Maiva was considered a blood brother of Amituani Anoi's father of fellowship wrestlers Afa and Sika Anoi, renowned as the Wild Samoans, who regard Peter as their uncle. Thus, from that time onward, the Anoi family regard the Maiva line as the extension of their own clan. Oh,
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So now we'll talk a little bit about some folklore, aka gods and goddesses. So the Norse gods Loki and Odin, aka Christina's cats, are famously stated to have mixed blood in days of old in Lokasenna. This has been taken as an explanation of why Loki is at all tolerated by the gods. Are your cats, Loki and Odin, are they actually blood brothers? Like, are they from the same litter?
No.
No? Okay. Christina's looking at me weird like, you mean did they do a blood pact?
That's exactly what I thought you were saying. They will beat the shit out of each other, so I'm sorry, like one point or another, but no, they are not of
Okay,
the same line.
Got it. All right, so Liu Bei Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, in the historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms by Luo Guanzong, these three men swore in their famous Oath of the Peach Garden that despite not being born on the same day, their sworn brotherhood would end with them dying on the same day, kind of like Gillian and Sally.
How about that?
Look at
That's
that.
pretty cool.
All right. Histories only mention that three men were close, or quote, close like brothers. I wonder if that's like a popular blood oath trope. Like, if you take that blood oath, are you supposed to like inherently die on the same day? Like, I'm wondering, why did they include that in the film? Like, did they get that
Yeah.
trope from somewhere else? Maybe this folklore? I don't know.
Yeah, Ling Bai and Guai Yu.
Yeah. Interesting. So in the Chinese tale Journey to the West, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, became blood brothers with Niu Moang, the Bull Demon King, and several other demon leaders. Demons! But later on, this brother relationship was forgotten because of a conflict that occurred involving the Bull Demon's son that caused other problems for Wukong. Wukong also mentions being sworn brothers with Erlang Shen. Erlang has 6 other sworn brothers from Plum Hill.
Okay, so like a dissolving or an annulment of a blood pact has been done before.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it is possible. So that's all the folklore we have for you right there. And also, like, I'm wondering, like, like frat brothers, like fraternities, they do
And
a lot
even
of
the military.
Yeah, they do like a lot of hazing and a lot of like initiation type stuff, kind of like these old ancient blood pacts. And I'm just like wondering, like, when did that start becoming a college thing for fraternities? Like,
It must have been through this, like the Greek mythos, because like that's all the fraternity houses are Greek, the Greek
right.
alphabet, right?
Right, yeah.
So it must have been sacrifices to the gods, maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Interesting. We'll have
I
to
didn't go into that
deep
corner
dive
of the world of the internet.
down that rabbit hole. That
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
curious. Okay.
We'll take
All
a quick break. This again is going to be a 2-part series. We're not going to overload you, but when we come back, I did find something about bloodletting in the humors and more about blood offerings, time and place for sacrifice, and like modern methods of sacrifice. So all of that when we come back. Stick around.
Hey, little witches!
The Stinas here. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you would know how much we love using the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle deck by Grounded by the Moon.
And now we want to share the magic of Grounded by the Moon with you, our listeners. Joseph Benitez Egerton, the creator behind Grounded by the Moon, would like to offer this very special 10% off discount to all who wish to experience the magic of his Practical Magic themed tarot and oracle decks.
But that's not all. He also creates other divination tools like tarot workbooks, deck bags and altar cloths, pendulum kits, oil blends, cleansing sprays, smoke wands, teas, and ritual kits.
And let's not forget about his custom handcrafted, all-natural soy candles, where every candle is hand-poured and personally infused and charged under the light of the moon. They even come with a crystal.
And did we mention all of the ingredients in the candles are ethically sourced?
All of Joseph's offerings are just so magical. So go visit groundedbythemoon.com and use the coupon code Magnolia Magic for 10% off your entire order at checkout.
That's MAGNOLIA MAGIC. So get your discount today. All right, guys, welcome back. We're gonna whip out our trusty Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle by Grounded by the Moon. There actually is a Blood Bond card. Did I show you this card?
That's right. I had a knife card in my oracle deck. Let's do that Blood Bond one.
Okay. Yeah, so the card is called Blood Bond, and the symbol on this card, they're two fingers kind of like pointing toward each other with like a sun flash or aura or like an orb in the middle. Very, very pretty.
Sunburst.
And it's kind of like a nicer, I guess, more PG way to portray that kind of bond and not actually have blood shedding on the card, you know?
No blood.
No blood actually on the Blood Bond card, but the keyword on this card is connections, support. Everyone has that one person, that one special connection that they can turn to in times of need. It is time to utilize your Blood Bond. Reach out and make that connection, strengthen your relationship. Ignite that special and unique bond. This bond holds immense power and extraordinary strength. When activated, this bond turns into a spark and ignites dormant energies that lie within. These energies will support you, bringing forth illumination and protection that you may need. Use the power of rope magic. Take two pieces and empower them with the energies of yourself and your bond, visualizing that spark while you tie them together and unite the energies. And it's interesting that Joseph mentions the power, using the power of a rope to strengthen that blood bond, because if you think of a blood pact or a blood bond, when you seal your, I guess, your energies together with blood, if you think about it metaphorically, you are kind of you're tethering yourself to that person.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So-
You got to undo that tether somehow.
Exactly. The mantra on this card says, I actively open and engage my connection. And the first part of this, where it says reach out and make that connection, strengthen your relationship, ignite that special unique bond, because it holds immense power and extraordinary strength when activated. That reminds me of kind of our relationship, because until you reached out to me to be like, hey, want to work on this project? And I obliged. It wasn't until then, like when we actually started working and creating together, that power actually started to increase and manifest or show itself, right?
Yeah, super special stuff started happening. And we, again, were in each other's orbits and would say hi. But other people had said, like, you guys should work together. You guys should do something together. And then we never did. And then, a year and a half, in the past,
Yeah.
this whole wild thing
It is wild.
spiraled from it.
So, yeah. Again, well, not really the current meaning of blood is thicker than water, but the previous meaning of blood is thicker than water, what we just learned, right? It used to mean that it's the company that you keep that really, it enhances your own energy and the things you put out into the world.
Those
right?
people that make you want to be better, keep those people. And Justina, you're one of them. And I'm not trying to get gushy or anything, but
No,
like,
well, you're one
when
of
I-
them too.
when I don't want to do podcast shit, I think about you, because you're a night owl, just being up all hours of the night, like typing away, researching. I'm like, I need to do that too. Okay, we're doing this. Boom, 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 boom.
You do it too, except you do yours at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I ain't about that life. So, but, like, see, that's why we work so well, because we're kind of like a 24-hour open business. I get the night shift, you get the morning shift, and it just works. It just works.
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven, right? We're open all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I did send you in the chat my little picture, my watercolor of a knife that I had included in a maybe Oracle deck that I was working on. And I think the words were connection, bond, and nostalgia. But Joseph's card is so beautiful, but we'll include this maybe in our notes
Okay.
as well.
Cute.
Cool. All right. I know next to nothing about the humors and all that shit and bloodletting, but you had asked, so I pulled this from the internet as quickly as I could.
Okay.
So why did doctors use this in their practice? So the practice of withdrawing blood from a person's veins for therapeutic reasons was common for thousands of years. And this Curiosities of Medical History feature, they took a look at the history of bloodletting and how it eventually fell out of favor with the medical community. Also known as phlebotomy, trusted source, from the Greek word phlebos, meaning vein, and temnin, meaning to cut, bloodletting is a therapeutic practice, or was, that started in antiquity. Today, however, the term phlebotomy refers to the drawing of blood for transfusions or blood tests. Some sources suggest that the original practice of bloodletting is more than 3,000 years old, and that the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, as well as many of the other ancient people, use it as a medical treatment. But what was the origin of the notion of bleeding someone to help them get better? And this goes to the theory of the four humors. So Hippocrates, who was an ancient Greek physician, lived in the 5th century before the Common Era, and was one of the most important figures of the history of medicine. Practiced medicine according to the theory of the four humors, or humoral theory. This theory posited that there were 4 key humors or liquids in the human body, that imbalances in these humors were responsible for many physical and mental illnesses. According to the most influential versions of this theory, they are the following. So there's black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. In the 2nd century before the Common Era, Galen, a famous Roman physician who also subscribed to the humoral theory, promoted
Arteriotomy.
a bloodletting method as a means of reestablishing the balance of the 4 humors and treating various symptoms. So according to Galen, a bloodletting incision in the vein behind the ear could treat vertigo and headaches. This is yuck. And letting blood flow out through that incision in the temporal arteries, the veins found on the temples, could treat eye conditions. The principle behind bloodletting is to remove some blood in a controlled way so that the patient doesn't end up bleeding to death or profusely. So what are these 4 humors? A little bit more. We talked about the blood, the phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Each humor is associated with one of the 4 quarters of matter. So yellow bile is associated with heat, blood is associated with dryness, phlegm with moisture, and black bile with cold. So men were thought to be primarily hot and dry, while women were cold and wet. What a person ate was thought to change the balance of these humors, and even specific flavors were thought to influence you. Did you know that your butthole essentially has taste buds, and that's why when you eat spicy food and you poop it out, it's still spicy?
All right, that explains a lot. I told you Avi was eating all the hot sauce like recently.
Yes.
He was feeling that through his butthole the next
Oh my gosh.
days, for sure.
I had to share that with you. I've been dying to share that with you.
I did not.
In some cases, humors were even associated with different zodiac signs.
Oh.
I did not know. Ideally, the balance of the humors that people needed for ideal health, the theory suggested, reduced by 3/4 of each humor. Blood should be primary, and people should have around 1/4 as much phlegm as they had blood. I don't know. They should then have 1/4 of as much yellow bile as phlegm and 1/4 of much black bile as yellow bile. I don't fucking know.
Okay, so it's a balancing act, okay?
It's a delicate balance.
They need to be regulated, they need to be balanced, I guess, in order for the human body to function.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So just specifically about the blood, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
The blood was generally thought to be the most important, most prevalent, and the amount of blood an individual had depended on their gender, age, diet, and health, as well as the time of the year and other factors. Blood was thought to be generated, not circulated, generated in the heart, and was primarily associated with spring, as well as with heat and wetness. People who had too much blood, proportionately speaking, were said to have a sanguine temperament. Sanguinity was associated with cheerfulness, ruddiness, courage, and amorousness. Those who were thought to be excessively sanguine were sometimes treated with bloodletting. There it is, which was common in those medical practices that unfortunately didn't do too much good. It harmed more than it did any good. So I hope that shed a little light.
Interesting.
on
I'm
the blood.
sure that's a whole rabbit hole we could have gone so deep down, but that's the gist of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit about blood offerings. So if this is TMI, this is triggering, feel free
If
to
you're still here, you might as well keep going.
Right, if you're still here and you're not squeamish at this point, then yeah, just hang out.
Hang on.
hang on tight. It's about to get real. So, blood offerings. Okay, so basic to both animal and human sacrifice is the recognition of blood as the sacred life force in man and beast. Through the sacrifice, through the return of the sacred life revealed in the victim, the god lives and therefore man and nature live. The great potency of blood has been utilized through sacrifice for a number of purposes. Examples: earth fertility, purification, expiation? What's expiation? The letting of blood, however, was neither the only end nor the only mode of human and animal sacrifice. A wide variety of animals have served as sacrificial offerings. In ancient Greece and India, for example, oblations included a number of important domestic animals such as the goat, ram, bull, ox, and horse. Moreover, in Greek religion, all edible birds, wild animals of the hunt, and fish were used. In ancient Judaism, the kind of animal and the number of animals for the various sacrifices was carefully stipulated so that the offering might be acceptable and thus fully effective. This sort of regulation is generally found in sacrificial cults. The offering must be appropriate either to the deity to whom or to the intention for which is to be presented. Very often the sacrificial species, animal or vegetable, was closely associated with the deity to whom it was offered as the deity's symbolic representation or even its incarnation. Thus, in the Vedic ritual, the goddesses of night and morning received the milk of a black cow having a white calf. The bull of heaven, Indra, was offered a bull, and Surya, the sun god, was offered a white male goat. Similarly, the ancient Greeks sacrificed black animals to the deities of the dark underworld, swift horses to the sun god Helios, pregnant sows to the earth mother Demeter, and the dog guardian of the dead to Hecate, goddess of darkness. Wait a minute.
Dogs.
A dog? Wait, so it said black animals to the dark underworld gods and goddesses. So Hecate is the goddess of the underworld, right?
Yeah.
So the black
She's an
dog,
underworld goddess.
So the black dog, is that the symbol of Hecate?
Hecate. Could be, yeah.
Interesting connection.
Hecate.
Hecate, mighty Hecate, make it right.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting connection there.
Mm-hmm.
So Hecate is the goddess of darkness. The Syrians sacrificed fish, regarded as the lord of the sea and the guardian of the realm of the dead, to the goddess Atargatis, and ate the consecrated offering in a communion meal with the deity, sharing in the divine power. An especially prominent sacrificial animal was the bull, or its counterparts, the boar and the ram, which, as the representation and embodiment of the cosmic powers of fertility, was sacrificed to the numerous fertility gods, like the Norse god Freyr, the Greek bull of the earth, Zeus, how do you say that word? Chthonios, and the Indian bull of heaven, Indra. The occurrence of human sacrifice appears to have been widespread and its intentions various, ranging from communion with a god and participation in his divine life to expiation and the promotion of the earth's fertility. It seems to have been adopted by agricultural rather than by hunting or pastoral peoples. Of all the worldly manifestations of the life force, the human undoubtedly impressed men as the most valuable and thus the most potent and efficacious as an oblation. Thus, in Mexico, the belief that the sun needed human nourishment led to sacrifices in which as many as 20,000 victims perished annually in the Aztec and Nahua calendrical maize ritual in the 14th century CE. Dude, have you ever seen Apocalypto?
Such a good movie. I was just going to ask you that.
Shit, that movie.
I was blown away.
Amazing movie, but wow.
Very, I'm guessing accurate.
Accurate and very graphic, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So bloodless human sacrifices also developed and assumed greatly different forms. For example, a Celtic ritual involved the sacrifice of a woman by immersion, and among the Maya in Mexico, young maidens were drowned in sacred wells. In Peru, women were strangled. In ancient China, the king's retinue was commonly buried with him, and such interments continued intermittently until the 17th century. In many societies, human victims gave place to animal substitute or to the effigies made of dough, wood, or other materials. Thus, in India, with the advent of British rule, human sacrifices to the Dravidian village goddess, Grama Devis, were replaced by animal sacrifices. In Tibet, under the influence of Buddhism, which prohibits all blood sacrifice, human sacrifice to the pre-Buddhist Bon deities was replaced by the offering of dough images or reduced to pantomime. Moreover, in some cults, both human and animal oblations could be, quote, ransomed, for example, replaced by offerings or money or inanimate valuables.
Interesting.
The whole blood sacrifice thing reminds me of that scene in Indiana Jones where he rips the heart out of that guy and he's like, Galima! Shakti Day! Yeah. And
Monkey brains!
my mind always goes right to that scene when I think
We
of
should watch that movie when we hang out.
human sacrifice. That's probably what my favorite Indiana Jones is, the Temple of Doom. Best
Same.
one. Hands
Yeah.
down. Best
Hands
one.
down.
So bloodless offerings. Among the many life-giving substances that have been used as libations are milk, honey, vegetable, animal oils, beer, wine, and water. How many of us leave little fairy offerings like milk, honey, and like a little dish
Absolutely.
out in our garden, right?
Yeah.
Offerings don't always have to be bloody and offensive. Like you can
Absolutely.
you can leave other little offerings in other ways. So, of these last two have been especially prominent. Wine is the blood of the grape and thus the blood of the earth, a spiritual beverage that invigorates gods and men. And
Do you know
also,
what Aaron likes to call like vineyards or like grapevines?
this guy has a name for everything. Tell me.
Wine trees.
Wine trees. The grape orchard.
That's my favorite tree. The wine tree.
I'm gonna go tap that wine tree and just admire all the daffodils.
That's right.
God. This guy and
This
his
guy.
wordage cracks me.
He's a wordsmith, yeah.
The wordsmith. So water is always the sacred, quote, water of life, the primordial source of existence, and the bearer of the life of plants, animals, human beings, and even the gods. Because of its great potency, water, like blood, has been widely used in purificatory and expiatory rites to wash away defilements and restore spiritual life. Demons. It has also, along with the wine, been an important offering to the dead as a revivifying force. And also, like, if you think about like the fountain of youth, right? That's just isn't that just water?
I have not looked into it. There's so many theories about this fucking fountain of youth. People think it's in Florida, by the way.
Florida?
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yep.
All right. I would believe that it's in like Rome or somewhere, mythical and like ancient.
Yeah, Mesopotamia.
Florida? Okay. Slow your old Florida man. Some Florida man came up with that shit. He's like, it's
sure.
here in Florida. No. Leave your crocodiles and alligators alone. Don't be trying to tap their swamps for that fountain of youth. Oh my god. So vegetable offerings have included not only the edible herbaceous plants, but also grains, fruits, and flowers. In both Hinduism and Jainism, flowers, fruits, and grains, cooked and uncooked, are included in the daily temple offerings. In some agricultural societies, for example, those of West Africa, yams and other tuber plants have been important in planting and harvest sacrifices, and in other rites concerned with the fertility and fecundity of the soil.
And placentas.
The placenta? These plants have been regarded as especially embodying the life force of the defied earth and are frequently buried or plowed into the soil to replenish and reactivate its energies.
Delightful.
Divine offerings. One further conception must be briefly mentioned. A god himself may be sacrificed. This notion was elaborated in many mythologies. It is fundamental in some sacrificial rituals. In early sacrifice, the victim has something of the god in itself, but in the sacrifice of a god, the victim is identified with the god. At the festival of the ancient Mexican sun god, oh Jesus, what's this word? Huitzilopochtli. I don't know. The statue of the god, which was made from a beetroot paste and kneaded in human blood, because the beetroot is red, right? So it makes it like kind of like a red effigy or
Super staining, yeah.
Yeah. And which was identified with the god, who was divided into pieces, shared out among the devotees, and eaten. In the Hindu Soma ritual related to the Hoama ritual of ancient Persia, the Soma plant, which is identified with the god Soma, is pressed for its intoxicating juice, which is then ritually consumed. The Eucharist, as understood in many of the Christian churches, contains similar elements. In short, Jesus is really present in the bread and wine that are ritually offered and then consumed. And did you ever see that Dane Cook skit where he's talking about the Eucharist as like cereal, and he's like, Christ checks, start your day the holy way. Yeah. He makes fun of going up for the Eucharist.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like talking about how like you try to trick the priest. Am I going to do it with my hand or am I going to do it with my mouth?
Yeah.
Your move, holy man.
Your move, holy man.
I can quote his
What
entire.
happened to him?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
What a time.
He got old. He got old, right?
Good.
All right. So where are we at? So yeah, the Eucharist, that's, kind of sacrifice, I guess, when you take the Eucharist.
Also, that is like such a stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
Even for a kid. You know me.
You take things
For
very
somebody
little.
who's gonna cut their hand open and be like, it's like the movies. But no, you go into church and they're telling you, no, this wafer and
Yeah.
that juice over there, that's skin and that's blood.
Yeah.
And that's not, we're not making that up. After
Right.
this little bing bang walla walla ding dang, that is skin and blood.
I guess.
I'm like, well, I don't want that. I'll take the crackers and the juice.
Well, I guess in a sense, and again, going back to, quote, Christian folklore and how we think that Christians are inherently witchy, right? Because if you think about it, the wafer being the body and the wine being the blood, isn't that sympathetic magic acting as if those are tag locks to Jesus?
To Jesus, you're taking that into your body because you want to be
Right.
like God.
Right. So are those tag locks to Jesus is my question, right? Would that be sympathetic
Yes.
magic?
Yeah.
All right. All these holy people acting like they ain't witches. I see you.
Drinking blood.
I see
Hashtag vampires.
you. Wasn't Jesus the first zombie?
Zombie Jesus Day.
Rising from the
we
dead.
just passed that. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. No, we didn't.
No, Easter we will be in Boston on Easter.
Yes, we will.
I am missing Easter Sunday to record witchy music.
Is it a big deal for
Not
you?
really. I mean, my family
Okay.
gets together, like, I grew up Catholic, so they do the whole St. Joseph's bread and they do the
Oh.
egg bread and like Bona Pasqua. It's like, Happy Easter. Like, it's a thing, but I don't care that I'm missing it.
Okay, cool.
Not a
we
big
should do
deal.
something extremely devilish and zombie-like.
My grandmother would probably care more than anybody else in my family because she just wants to see me. I don't think it has anything to do
Yeah.
with the religion aspect,
Yeah.
But yeah, the family is gathering on Easter, but I won't be there because we'll be recording, so that's fine.
I mean, we can go to church if you want.
Take me to church.
On vacation. My parents used to do that. When we go to the beach, we'd always get a like hotel room near a church.
Really?
Because on a Sunday, they'd be at church.
That is hardcore. It's almost like, I'm sorry, like if I'm on vacation, I want to be sinful. I ain't trying to, I ain't trying
To
to
get
be
my sin on.
I'm trying to get my sin on. I ain't trying to be about that Catholic lifestyle. Like,
Life.
trying to do things that you're not trying to do at home. It's kind of like working out. Like, when you go on vacation, Avi always goes on vacation with the intention of going to the gym. He's like, let's make sure it has a gym, or like, let's make sure our hotel has some place to work out. I know that motherfucker ain't working out while we're standing there at the friggin' buffet line for the third time that day.
I do want to go. I'm bringing my bathing suit and
Okay.
I'm bringing my workout stuff because we're there for a week.
Yeah,
And I got to do something. So maybe we can all go like hit the gym and
A
feel
week
good about ourselves and
is
then eat like
extensive.
trash.
And then eat like trash. Yeah, a week is a kind of an extensive amount of time to be away. But like,
Yeah. Bring your stuff. We'll
Yeah.
go do something.
all right. Well, yeah, we'll go for a couple walks or something like that.
Okay.
Where are we? So yeah, Jesus presents the bread and the wine that are ritually offered and consumed. According to the traditional Eucharistic doctrine of Roman Catholicism, the elements of bread and wine are, quote, transubstantiated into the body and blood of Christ. For example, their whole substance is converted into the whole substance of the body and blood. Although the outward appearances of the elements, their, quote, accidents remain, whatever the fuck that means. But yeah, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Okay, so time and place of sacrifice. So in many cults, sacrifices are distinguished by frequency of performance into two types, regular and special. Regular sacrifices may be daily, weekly, monthly, or seasonal, like planting, harvesting, and the new year. Also, often included are sacrifices made at specific times in each man's life: birth, puberty, marriage, and death. Offerings made on special occasions and for special intentions have included, for example, sacrifices in times of danger, sickness, or crop failure, or those performed at the construction of a building for success in a battle, or in Thanksgiving for a divine favor. What? Don't know what that, they didn't elaborate on that, so I don't know what that means. In the Vedic cult, the regular sacrifices were daily, monthly, and seasonal. The daily rites included fire offerings to the gods and libations and food offerings to the ancestors and the earth divinities and spirits. The monthly sacrifices conducted at the time of new and full moons were of cakes or cooked oblations to sundry deities, especially the storm god Indra. Some daily and monthly sacrifices could be celebrated in the home by a householder, but only the official priesthood could perform the complex seasonal sacrifices, offered 3 times a year. At the beginning of spring, of the rainy season, and of the cool weather, for the purpose of expiation and of abundance, of the occasional sacrifices which could be celebrated at any time, especially important were those associated with kingship, such as the royal consecration and the great, quote, horse sacrifice, performed for the increase of the king's power and domain. In ancient Judaism, the regular or periodic sacrifices included the twice daily burnt offerings, the weekly Sabbath sacrifices, the monthly offering at the new moon, and annual celebrations such as Passover, Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, and the Sukkot Feast of Tabernacles. Special sacrifices were usually of a personal nature, such as a thank and votive offerings and, quote, guilt offerings. The common place of sacrifice in most cults is an altar. The table type of altar is uncommon. More often, it is only a pillar, a mound of earth, a stone, or a pile of stones. Among the Hebrews in early times and other Semitic peoples, the altar of the god was frequently an upright stone, established at a place in which the deity had manifested itself. It was deemed the house of God. Frequently, the altar is regarded as the center or the image of the universe. For the ancient Greeks, the grave marker, a mound of earth or stone, was the earth altar upon which sacrifices to the dead were made, and like other earth altars, it was called the omphalos, also known as the navel of the earth. For example, the central point from which terrestrial life originated. In Vedic India, the altar was regarded as a microcosm, its parts representing the various parts of the universe, and its construction being interpreted as repetition of the creation of the cosmos. Yeah, very interesting. You want to tell us about the method of sacrifice?
Yeah. Along with libation, the sacrificial effusion of blood, one of the commonest means of making an oblation available to sacred beings is to burn it. I've never smelled burning blood, but I don't want to imagine. It must be nasty. In both ancient Judaism and Greek religion, the major offering was the burnt or fire offerings. Through the medium of the fire, the oblation was conveyed to the divine recipient. In ancient Greece, the generic term for sacrifice, phreisthesia, was derived from a root meaning to burn or to smoke. In Judaism, the important sacrifices, ola or jiva, involved the ritual burning, either entirely or in part of the oblation, but in animal or vegetation. For the Babylonians also, fire was essential to sacrifice, and all oblations were conveyed to the gods by the fire god Giru Nusku. Those present as intermediaries between the gods and man were indispensable. In the Vedic cult, the god of fire, Anji or Angi, received the offerings of man and brought them into the presence of the gods. As burning is often the appropriate mode for sacrifice to celestial deities, so burial is often the appropriate mode for sacrifice to earth deities. In Greece, for example, sacrifices to the chthonic or underworld powers were frequently buried rather than burned, or if burned, burned near the ground or even in a trench. In Vedic India, the blood and entrails of animals sacrificed on a fire altar to the sky gods were put upon the ground for the earth deities, including the ghosts and malevolent spirits. In West Africa, yams, again, and fowl sacrificed to promote the fertility of the earth are planted in the soil. In sacrifice by burning and by burial, as also in the effusion of blood, the prior death of the human or animal victim, even if ritually performed, is in a sense incidental to the sacrificial action. There are, however, sacrifices, including live burials and burnings, in which the ritual killing is itself the means by which the offering is effected. Illustrative of this method was the practice in ancient Greece and Indian cults of making sacrifices to water gods by drowning the oblation in sacred lakes or rivers. Similarly, the Norse cast human and animal victims over cliffs and into wells and waterfalls as offerings to the divinities dwelling there within. In the Aztec sacrifice of human beings to the creator god,
Wait.
Get away.
Zipetotec?
Thank you. The victim was lashed to a scaffold and shot to death with bows and arrows. There was also sacrifices that do not involve the death or destruction of the oblation. Such were the sacrifices in ancient Greece of fruits and vegetables at the, quote, pure altar of Apollo at Delos, at the shrine of Athena in Lindus, and at the altar of Zeus in Athens. These, quote, fireless oblations were especially appropriate for the deities of vegetation and fertility, as an example of Demeter and Dionysus. In Egypt, bloodless offerings of food and drink were simply laid before the god on mats or on a table in a daily ceremony called, quote, performing the presentation of the divine oblations. In both Greek and Egyptian cults, such offerings were never to be eaten by the worshippers, but they were performed surreptitiously, consumed by the priests or temple attendants. In ancient Israel, on the other hand, the food offerings of the, quote, table of the shewbread, this also says the bread of the presence of God, were regarded as available to the priest and could be given by them to the laity. In Hinduism, the daily offering of cooked rice and vegetables after the consecration is distributed by the priests, the worshippers, as the deity's, quote, grace. In some cases, the sacrificial gifts are put out to be eaten by an animal representative of the deity. In Dahomey, wandering dogs consume, on behalf of the trickster deity Eshu, the consecrated food oblations presented to the god each morning at his shrines.
So the recipient of the sacrifice. So sacrifices may be offered to beings who can be the object of religious veneration or worship. They will not be made to human beings unless they have first been deified in some way. In some cases, sacrifice is made only to the god or gods. In others, it is made to the deity, the spirits, and the departed, who are considered intermediaries between the deity and men. The Kol people of Uganda, for example, are said to make no sacrifices to God, thinking he does not expect any. But on the third day following the new moon, they make offerings to the guardian spirits, the Emandwa. And they also make offerings at the shrines of ancestors, the Emizimu, of up to 3 generations back. Worship of spirits and ancestors, often including the offering of sacrifices, occurs in widely distributed cultures. In fact, according to some scholars, probably the major recipients of sacrifice in non-Western traditions are the ancestors. And I know in the Mexican Day of the Dead, they have these things called ofrendas, which are basically, it's the altars where they leave the offerings of like marigolds and alcohol, sweet treats, anything that their ancestors would have liked in the waking world, you know?
No blood.
Yeah, no blood. It's all good stuff, like party stuff.
To
Food,
attract.
food and
They
beverage.
want them there. Yeah.
Right. And pretty flowers.
Yeah. Those flowers are so pretty.
You can summon me with like
Cold brew.
probably cold brew and roses.
That's it.
Cold brew and roses if you want to summon my spirit.
Specifically Dunkin' Donuts.
Specifically, okay, if we're gonna get technical, I really love me a butter pecan cold brew with almond milk. So
That does sound really good.
I'll be waiting for it. Okay. Intentions. This says Celtic sacrifice by immersion. Sacrifices have been offered for a multiplicity of intentions, and it is possible to list only some of the most prominent. In any one sacrificial rite, a number of intentions may be expressed, and the ultimate goal of all sacrifice is to establish a beneficial relationship with the sacred order, to make the sacred power present and efficacious. So serious illness, drought, pestilence, epidemic, famine, and other misfortune and calamity have universally been regarded as the workings of supernatural forces. Often, they have been understood as the effects of offenses against the sacred order committed by individuals or communities, deliberately or unintentionally. Such offenses break the relationship with the sacred order or impede the flow of divine life. Thus, it has been considered necessary in times of crisis, individual or communal, to offer sacrifices to propitiate sacred powers and to wipe out offenses, or at least neutralize their effects and restore their relationship. Among the Yoruba of West Africa, blood sacrifice must be made to the gods, especially to the earth deities, who, as elsewhere in Africa, are regarded as the divine punishers of sin. For the individual, the oblation may be fowl as in birds, right, or a goat. For an entire community, it may be hundreds of animals. In former days, the principal oblation was a human. Once consecrated and ritually slain, the oblations are buried, burnt, or left exposed, but never shared by the sacrificer. In ancient Judaism, the hatat, or sin offering, was an important ritual for the expiation of certain, especially unwittingly committed defilements. The guilty laid their hands upon the head of the sacrificial animal, an unblemished bullock or goat, thereby identifying themselves with the victim, making it their representative but not their substitute, for their sins were not transferred to the victim.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, like transference magic or some shit, but that's not what it is.
Right. After the priest killed the beast, blood was sprinkled upon the altar and elsewhere in the sacred precincts. The point of the ritual was to purify the guilty and to reestablish the holy bond with God through the blood of the consecrated victim. It was, as such, an expiatory sacrifice that early Christianity regarded the life and death of Christ. By the shedding of his blood, the sin of mankind was wiped out and a new relationship of eternal life was effected between God and man. Like the innocent and, quote, spotless victims of the Hatat, Christ died for men on behalf of, but not in place of them. Also, the Hatats, the point of his death was not the appeasement of divine wrath, but the shedding of his blood for the wiping out of sin. The major differences between the sacrifices of Christ and that of the Hatat animal are that, number 1, Christ was regarded as a voluntary and effective sacrifice for all men, and 2, his was considered the perfect sacrifice, made once in time and space but perpetuated in eternity by the risen Lord, aka Zombie Jesus.
He gave up a weekend.
He gave up a weekend. So there are sacrifices, however, in which the victim does serve as a substitutor for the guilty. In some West African cults, a person believed to be under death penalty by the gods offers an animal substitute to which he transfers his sins.
Ah.
Okay. The animal, which is then ritually killed, is burned with complete funeral rites as though it were the human person. Thus, the guilty person is dead, and it is an innocent man who is free to begin a new life. How many of those people you think are starting over? Like, how many of them do you think they were actually absolved of those sins and are actually gonna do good in the next?
This just sounds like going to confession. Like,
Right.
you know you're going to do it again.
Right.
You can
So
just
they
go to confession.
so they just kill this poor animal, just taking on all your sins
Yeah.
that you're just gonna keep. Yeah, I don't know about that. Finally, some propitiatory sacrifices are clearly prophylactic, intended to avert possible misfortune and calamity, and as such, they are really bribes offered to the gods. Thus, in Dahomey libations and animal and food offerings are frequently made to a variety of earth spirits to ensure their good favor in preventing any adversity from befalling the one making the offering.
I don't know what a prophylactic is. I always think of it as like contraceptive. What is
Right.
it?
Isn't that what it is?
Prophylactic. Medically designed to prevent diseases.
Is that what it
Something
says?
that is designed to prevent the spread of diseases and infection.
Okay.
I always thought of it as condoms. I don't know, because I'm a dum-dum.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess condoms, they do try to prevent diseases, but it's not guaranteed.
The disease of a child.
The disease of a childbirth.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard. Take it out. I guess that's what it means. So gift sacrifices. Although all sacrifices involve the giving of something, there are some sacrificial rites in which the oblation is regarded as a gift made to the deity, either in expectation of a return gift or as a result of a promise upon the fulfillment of a requested divine favor. So gift sacrifices have been treated as, I guess, the above. Here it can be briefly noted that numerous instances of the votive offerings are recorded. In ancient Greece, sacrifices were vowed to Athena, Zeus, Artemis, and other gods in return for victory in battle. The solemnity and irrevocability of the votive offering is seen as the biblical account of the judge Jephthah's sacrifice of his only child in fulfillment of a vow to Yahweh. And Yahweh is God, right? Yahweh is just another word for God.
Yeah. We talked about Jephthah, I think.
Yeah, we did. I don't remember what it was.
I think it would have been in the Gustav Dore episode.
Maybe.
Because I think it was the sacrifice to get out of a war.
Okay.
That might be it.
Yeah. I do remember that name, though. That name rings a bell.
Trips over the tongue.
Jephthah. So thank offerings. One form of a thank offering is the offering of the first fruits in agricultural societies. Until the first fruits of the harvest have been presented with homage and thanks, and often with animal sacrifices to the deity of the harvest, sometimes regarded as embodied in the crop. The whole crop is considered sacred and thus taboo and may not be used as food. The first fruits sacrifice has the effect of desacralizing the crops and making them available for profane consumption. It is a recognition of the divine source and ownership of the harvest and the means by which man is reconciled with the vegetational chthonic powers from whom he takes it. Fertility. Another distinctive feature of the first fruits offering is that it serves to replenish the sacred potencies of the earth depleted by the harvest and to ensure thereby the continued regeneration of the crop. Thus, it is one of many sacrificial rites that have as their intention the seasonal renewal and reactivation of the fertility of the earth. Fertility rites usually involve some form of blood sacrifice in former days, especially human sacrifice. In some human sacrifices, the victim represented a deity who, in the beginning, allowed himself to be killed so that from his body, edible vegetation might grow. The ritual slaying of the human victim amounted to a repetition of the primordial act of creation and thus a renewal of vegetational life. In other human sacrifices, the victim was regarded as representing the vegetation spirit that annually died at harvest time so that it might be reborn in a new crop. In still other sacrifices at planning time or in time of famine, the blood of the victim, animal or human, was let upon the ground and its flesh buried in the soil to fertilize the earth and recharge its potencies. Like Jimmy, right?
Like Jimmy.
He was just fertilizer at that point.
Isn't that a line in the song you wrote from Man Under the Roses? I've never seen them grow something like this time of year. What are you feeding the roses?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Genius, I tell you.
Genius writing. Pure poetry.
Pure poetry. A fucking Edgar Allan Poe up in here.
Edgar Allan poetry.
Edgar Allan poetry. So, building sacrifices. Numerous instances are known of animal and human sacrifices made in the course of the construction of houses, shrines, and other buildings, and in the laying out of villages and towns. Their purpose has been to consecrate the ground by establishing the beneficent presence of the sacred order and by repelling or rendering harmless the demonical powers of the place. In some West African cults, for example, before the central pole of a shrine or a house is installed, an animal is ritually slain, its blood being poured around the foundation and its body being put into the post hole. On the one hand, this sacrifice is made to the earth deities and the supernatural powers of the place, the real owners, so that the human owner may take possession and be insured against malevolent interferences with the construction of the building and its later occupation and use. On the other hand, the sacrifice is offered to the cult deity to establish its benevolent presence in the building. A mortuary sacrifice. So, throughout the history of man's religions, the dead have been the recipients of offerings from the living. In ancient Greece, an entire group of offerings, the anagasmata, was consecrated to the dead. These were libations of milk, honey, water, wine, and oil poured onto the grave. In India, water and balls of cooked rice were sacrificed to the spirits of the departed. We did that. We did that for Avi's father when he passed away.
Really?
Yeah, we did a whole
wow.
ceremony, and they made the rice ball, and I think they like soak it in milk or something like that, and they put in like flowers and
Oh, it's
They
like a
put-
witch ball.
basically they put a whole bunch of stuff in it, and then when we were done with the whole, and it was like blessed by an actual monk. I don't know what they call it in Hinduism.
Yeah.
But he like did like a whole ritual in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is so ancient, not even modern Hindus know that language. Like they hired him to come in and nobody understood what the fuck. Like I don't even think Avi's family understood what he was saying because
That's really cool.
it's such an ancient language, and I think only the holy text is still written in it. So once like he blessed the whole thing and we did the whole ceremony or whatever, we took the bowl out to the backyard and buried it under a tree. So all the contents of the bowl go into the tree, and it's an offering to the departed.
The bowl too?
No, just the contents in the bowl.
got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't think it was the bowl too. I don't remember. I think it was just the stuff in the bowl, if I remember correctly.
That's really neat.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was like kind of enlightening. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful because like I had never been a part of a Hindu ritual like that. So it was very educational. It was cool.
Even for not knowing the language and them not knowing the language, it's something about it, maybe being so ancient and old, just connects you like right away. It's like a visceral, I know this feeling.
Yeah, it was very cool. So in West Africa, offerings of cooked grain, yams, and animals were made to the ancestors residing in the earth. The point of such offerings is not that the dead get hungry and thirsty, nor are they merely propitiatory offerings. Their fundamental intention seems to be that of increasing the power of life of the departed. The dead partake of the life of the gods, usually the chthonic deities. And sacrifices to the dead are, in effect, sacrifices to the gods who bestow never-ending life. In Hittite funeral rites, for example, sacrifices were made to the sun god and other celestial deities, transcendent sources of life, as well as to the divinities of earth. So now communion sacrifices. Communion in the sense of the bond between the worshiper and the sacred power is fundamental to all sacrifice. And the communion we know most, like we hear that all the time in Catholicism, right? You go for your Holy Communion, you make that sacrament, and now you can get the body of Christ every Sunday when you go to church. So certain sacrifices, however, promote this communion by means of sacramental meal. The meal may be one in which the sacrificial oblation is simply shared by the deity and the worshippers. Of this sort were the Greek thesia, and the Jewish Jeva sacrifices, in which one portion of the oblation was burned upon the altar and the remainder eaten by the worshippers. Among the African Yoruba, special meals are offered to the deity. If the deity accepts the oblation, as divination will disclose, a portion of the food is placed before his shrine, while the remainder is joyfully eaten as a sacred communion by the worshippers. So I think that they're saying divination will disclose whether or not they accept the oblation. So I'm guessing if they do like some kind of like pendulum thing, or
Yes or no?
yeah, yes or no.
Knock once for yes, twice for no.
Picking the petals, will he loves me not? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that. The communion sacrifice may be one in which the deity somehow indwells the oblation so that the worshippers actually consume the divine. For example, the Hindu Soma ritual. The Aztecs twice yearly made dough images of the sun god, Jesus, Huitzilopochtli. What? Wait.
Nailed it.
Huitzilopochtli. I don't know. Huitzilopochtli that were consecrated to the god and thereby transubstantiated into his flesh to be eaten with fear and reverence by the worshippers.
And we know all about that. You're tagging me in.
Tagging you in.
Yeah, that leads us right into sacrifices in religions around the world. The constituent elements of sacrifice have been incorporated into the particular religions and cultures of the world in various and often complex ways. A few brief observations that may illustrate the variety and complexities are given below. Here we go. Justina, you're going to have to help me with some of these.
Okay.
So, the religions of India. Speculations regarding sacrifice and prescribed rituals seem to have been worked out more fully in the Vedic and later Hindu religions in India than anywhere else. These rites laid down in a complicated system known mainly from the Brahmana texts, including obligatory sacrifices following the course of the year or the important moments in the life of the individual, and optional sacrifices occasioned by the special wishes of the sacrificer. Yet cultic sacrifice has not developed in Buddhism, another religion that arose in India. Ritual sacrifice was judged to be ineffective, and in some of its forms to evoke cruelty and to run counter to the laws of ahimsa, or non-injury. There are, however, in the Yakata stories of the Buddha, previous births accounts of his self-sacrifices. Furthermore, Buddhism emphasizes the notion of ethical sacrifices, acts of self-discipline, and there are instances of devotional offerings such as burnt incense to the Buddha. So they're more like don't hurt anything, right?
Yeah, when Avi's father passed away, when we were like, his mother was like grieving, so we would go to his mom's house every day and pray with her with the incense. The incense smells so good. It smells really good. It's like, I don't know if it was like jasmine incense or I don't remember what kind of incense it was, but it smells really good. So we would go and she would do like the incense, like circle it around, and then she would put it in her hand and then like put it over our head. Like she would like bless us. We had a portrait of his father. We kind of made like a little altar to his father. We had like a string of marigolds, put it around his portrait, and she would like bless the portrait with the incense smoke.
No blood.
Yeah, no blood
needed.
Just smoke and flowers. It was a deep time.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
But I mean, the things that they did to honor him were beautiful. Beautiful.
So, in China, sacrifices, like all aspects of religion, has existed in a number of different levels. The essential features of imperial worship in ancient China was the elaborate sacrifice offered by the emperor himself to heaven and earth. There are also records of sacrifice, including human sacrifice, associated with the death of a ruler, because it was thought proper for him to be accompanied in death with those who served him during life. Oh shit, so they're sacrificing like his lackeys, like his servants.
Like his administration.
Yeah, the CEOs.
Okay.
But because the common people were excluded from participation in imperial sacrifices, they had lesser gods, some universal, some local, to whom sacrifices were made. Furthermore, ancestor worship has been the most universal form of religion throughout China's long history. We've all seen Mulan, right? You bring dishonor to your ancestors, right?
Oh, that's right. That's the word. Yep.
It was the responsibility of the lead of the household to see that sacrificial offerings to the dead were renewed constantly. The blending of these elements with such established religions as Buddhism and Taoism influenced the great diversification in sacrificial rites in China. Now, in Japan, offerings accompanied a particularly important place in religion because the relationship of the people to their gods seemed frequently to have had the character of a bargaining rather than adoration. It is probable that the offerings were originally individual, but they gradually became collective, especially as all powers, including religions, were consecrated in the hands of the emperor, who officiated in the name of all of his people. Human sacrifice to natural deities and at burials were once common, but seems generally to have been abandoned in the Middle Ages. Besides human sacrifice and their more modern substitutes, the Japanese offered to the gods all things that man regards as necessary for life. Example, food, clothing, and shelter, or merely useful and pleasing things like means of transportation, tools, weapons, objects of entertainment. That very popular, I think, is it Japanese? The soldiers, those underground soldiers, and they have the wagon, they have the horses, that burial site that's super famous.
The clay soldiers?
Yeah.
I think that's China. I think
China? Okay.
Yeah, I think Avi went to go see that when
Oh, wow.
he went to China for a work trip. It was a business trip. I don't remember if he ended up going or not, but I remember him talking about it.
Okay, but that's what they're saying is like they'll have carriages and they'll have means to get around and their tools and their weapons. These practices, which were found in the traditional religion known as Shinto, were modified when Confucianism and Buddhism were introduced into Japan during the 5th and 6th centuries CE. So in ancient Greece, the Homeric poems contain the most complete descriptions of sacrificial rites in ancient Greece. Maybe that's why the blood brothers and fraternities, because they're most well documented. These rites, which were maintained almost without change for more than 10 centuries, were of two types. One was thesia, addressed to the Olympic deities, which include burning part of a victim, then participating in a joyful meal offered to the god during the daytime, primarily to serve and establish communications with the gods. Then there's Symphagia, addressed to the infernal or chthonic deities, which involve the total burning or burying of a victim in a somber nocturnal ceremony to placate or avert the malevolent chthonic powers. Besides the official and quasi-official rites, the popular religion already in Homer comprised sacrifices of all kinds of animals and of vegetables, fruits, cheese, and honey, offered as expiation, supplication, or thanksgiving by worshippers belonging to all classes of society. Furthermore, the secret worship of what are known as the mysteries, cults normally promising immortality, or some form of personal relationship with a god, became widespread. This practice became especially prominent during the Hellenistic period.
That's another thing you can add to my ofrenda.
What's that?
Cheese.
Cheese! Yes.
As a matter of fact, just put a whole fucking charcuterie board on there. And I'll be there.
Me up.
I'll be there.
That's so funny.
Meat and cheese.
So in Judaism, the destruction of the second, I think we mentioned the Second Temple before, in 70 CE marked a profound change in the worship of the Jewish people. Before that event, sacrifice was the central act of the Israelite worship, and there were many categories of sacrificial rites that had evolved throughout history of the Jewish into a minutely detailed system found in the part of the Torah. And this is the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible that is ascribed to biblical scholars to the priestly code, which became established following the Babylonian exile. The sacrificial system ceased, however, with the destruction of the temple, and prayer took the place of the sacrifices. In modern Judaism, the Orthodox prayer books still contain prayers for the reinstitution of the sacrificial cult in the rebuilt temple. Reformed Judaism, however, has abolished or modified these prayers in keeping with the conception of sacrifice as once adequate by now outmoded form of worship. And some conservative congregations have also rephrased references to sacrifices so that they indicate solely past events without implying any hope for future restoration of the rite. So we talked a little bit about Christianity before, but here's a little bit more. The notion of sacrifice emerged in the early Christian communities in several different contexts. The death of Christ upon the cross, preceded by the Last Supper, was narrated in the Gospels in sacrificial terms. The life of Christ, culminating in his passion and death, was seen as a perfect sacrifice, and his resurrection and glorification were seen as God the Father's seal of approval on that life. The notion that members of the church are vitally linked to Christ and that their lives must be sacrificial was also elaborated, especially in the letters of St. Paul, Moreover, from the first decades of the church's existence, the celebration of the Eucharistic meal was connected with the sacrifice of Jesus. It was a, quote, memorial, anamnesis, a term denoting some sort of identity between the thing so described. It's sympathetic magic, guys.
Okay.
We'll just put that there.
We said that, which is what we said before, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The interpretation of sacrifice, and particularly the Eucharist as sacrifice, has varied greatly within the different Christian traditions, partly because the sacrificial terminology in which the Eucharist was originally described became foreign to Christian thinkers. In short, during the Middle Ages, the Eastern Church viewed the Eucharist principally as a life-giving encounter with Christ, the resurrected. The Roman Church, however, saw it primarily as a bloodless representation of the bloody sacrifice of Christ on the cross. For the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, the sacrifice of Christ was unique and all-sufficing, so that the idea of repeating it in cult became unnecessary. Sacrifice was separated from liturgy and was associated, especially in Calvinist Protestantism, with the personal ethic acts that should be made by a Christian believer. The ecumenical movement of the 20th century bolstered the modern biblical scholarship, led some of the Christian churches, such as the Roman Catholic and the Lutheran churches, to realize that they are not so far apart in their understanding of the Eucharist as sacrifice, as was formerly thought, and that they have many of the same elements and beliefs in common.
So Islam, faint shadows of sacrifice, as it was practiced by the pre-Islamic Arabs, have influenced Muslims so that they consider every slaughter of an animal an act of religion. They also celebrate feasts in fulfillment of a vow or in thanksgiving for good fortune, but there is no sacrificial ritual connected with these festive meals. During Eid al-Adha, an Arabic festival of sacrifice, marking the last day of the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to Mecca, families that can afford to may sacrifice a ritually acceptable animal like a sheep, goat, camel, or cow. But the rite is not obligatory. It is not the sacrifice that is important, but rather the visit to the sacred city. So also we're going to talk about voodoo in here because technically it's a monotheistic religion. Is that how you say? It's voodoo, right? But it's spelled V-O-D-O-U.
Yeah.
So voodoo, meaning spirit, may be one of the world's oldest ancestral nature honoring traditions. Some anthropologists estimate that voodoo's roots in Benin, formerly Dahomey, West Africa, may go back 6,000 years. Today, an estimated 60 million people practice voodoo worldwide. It was easy to meld the two faiths because there are many similarities between Roman Catholicism and voodoo, Corbett said. Both venerate a supreme being and believe in the existence of invisible evil spirits or daemons and in an afterlife. Each religion also focuses its ceremonies around a center point, an altar in Catholicism, a pole or tree in voodoo. Their services include symbolic or actual rituals of sacrifice and consumptions of flesh and blood.
We've all seen like the scene in the movie where the chicken gets sacrificed, right? And like the blood splinters, whatever. Splattering. Yeah, in conclusion, the organization of sacrificial rites in these different cultures and religions has undoubtedly been influenced by a number of factors. Economic considerations, for example, certainly have led to some impact upon primitive peoples in the selection of the victim and the time of sacrifice, and in the determination of whether the victim is consumed or totally destroyed, and whether the sacrificer is an individual or a collective group. The importance of such factors is an aspect of sacrifice that deserves increased investigation. Nevertheless, the sacrifice is not a phenomenon that can be reduced to rational terms. It is fundamentally a religious act that has been of profound significance to individuals and social groups throughout history, a symbolic act that establishes a relationship between man and the sacred order. For many people of the world throughout time, sacrifice has been the very heart of their religious life. This goes so deep that this just skims the surface. We wanted to really highlight like the Owens women. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
But to have, their connection through their blood just enhanced, I guess, with their magical hand cutting. It's interesting that it wasn't in the book, but they decided to put that in the movie.
Right. Well, because it's such a trope, right? It's such a cinematic TV movie trope.
They couldn't do a simple pinky swear. It had to be more than that, right?
Right, because a pinky swear, cool. The stakes aren't that high, right? You're not laying any blood on the line. If blood is not shed, it might as well just be a fart in the wind, like,
Yeah.
So they had to seal it somehow and to show that Gillian was serious. Like, no, I'm coming back for you. You're my sister. I love you. And like, while I need to leave right now, like, we're gonna die in the same fucking day. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So it just made it all the more like it sealed the deal. Like they're sisters and their love ain't going anywhere no matter if Gillian has to leave temporarily or not. So
Yeah. She's got to live her life. I'm coming back. Don't worry. Go live your life.
live their lives, yeah. So yeah, with that said, we are gonna snowball this into a part 2 for next week, right? Next week we're gonna dive into the specific magic properties that utilize blood offerings and oaths, as well as what magical inks are made with blood and a few notable historical figures connected with the blood. And I think now that I have a little extra time to dive a little deeper, maybe I'll try to look into the whole fraternity thing, like
Yeah.
all of that. And also, fraternities have this like secret society type of vibe to them. And I don't
Yeah.
know if it's like linked to the like Illuminati at all, or
Illuminati.
like what is it? What do they call it? Templar, the Knights of Templar,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like I don't know if it has anything to do with any of that, but I think it's just so fascinating.
Put it in.
And also, was it the chalice that was at the Last Supper where Jesus was like, "Take my blood, this is my blood," or whatever?
Oh, the blood, the
Holy
like the Ark
Grail?
of the Covenant or some
Isn't
shit?
that the Holy Grail?
Yeah, but I think it's the cup that when Jesus was on the cross and his side was speared and
Uh-huh.
didn't somebody collect the blood in the cup? You're probably right. It's probably the Last Supper cup. There's a really good book called Woman with the Alabaster Jar, and it's all about Mary Magdalene. I can't remember the author. It's so fucking good. And it just talks about that she was the cup.
Oh, the Holy Grail. Oh, Mary.
Yeah,
Magdalene
she's
was
the Holy Grail.
I have heard that. I have heard that theory. I read, what was it, the Da Vinci Code, like back in the day, and
Yeah.
like that whole book is like riddled with not only riddles but like literal riddles. Like you had to solve puzzles in the book to kind of figure out what the hell was going on.
Yeah, love that shit.
They talked a lot about the Knights of Templar and the Holy Grail and secret societies, the Illuminati. All of that shit is all lumped into that whole.
I want to hear about fraternities, man.
Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
curious if they're linked at all. And you know what I noticed? You brought up Mary Magdalene. When we were talking about the horrors of Babylon in our sluts episodes, I don't think we talked about Mary Magdalene.
I think we did a little bit.
I don't remember. I don't remember talking about her, but she's thrown into that whole.
We did talk about her because I think the translation was mistranslated. She wasn't she was a priestess, but I don't know how far down that rabbit hole we went. I can't remember.
Yeah. Interesting that her name came up though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, next week we'll dive deep into all those other areas of interest.
Dope. All right. That's all we have for you this week. If you
Yeah.
want to support our podcast, we appreciate it. Here's how you can do that.
If you guys do want to support the podcast on Patreon, you can support us for as little as $1 a month. That's our seedling tier, and that gets you access to our patron-only polls where you get to weigh in on what topics you would like us to talk about next. It also gets you our monthly calendar so you can see what topics we have coming up for the month, and it also gets you a welcome shout out on the show. Our $3 Lavender Bud tier gets you our show notes for each episode in an aesthetically pleasing PDF, our after hours posts, if there's any extra tidbits or behind the scenes info pertaining to any of our episodes, we'll post those along with a blog post or extra photos, and access to our specially curated Spotify playlists. We have created playlists for our WMSR episodes as well as Production Dream playlists for each song episode, and more. Our $5 Lilac tier gets you access to our private Facebook community where we host a monthly live stream. Plus, you'll get access to our Discord server where we host our monthly watch parties. And also on the Discord, you can join in on the discussion with other Magnolia Street neighbors via the various interesting channels and threads. And then here's the $8 Rose tier. This gets you access to extra audio visual content such as a once a month full-length video episode, unlimited bonus videos, uncut footage, cutting room floor footage, bloopers, outtakes, meditations, exclusive interviews, and old home videos from the vault, or spell or ritual videos, and more. It also gets you bonus content to coincide with our song-episodes, such as full-length demo streams of our original Practical Magic inspired music, plus lyric sheets, guitar chords, and original scratch demos, or bonus video performances of our songs and more. Lastly, we have our $15 Wisteria Vine tier. Just like a twisting Wisteria Vine, there's a way for you to stay connected with us, the Stinas. In this tier, we invite you to join our private Marco Polo video messaging app. The app is totally free for both Android and iOS. Sign up with your phone number or email, and we will help you do the rest. This is a great way to chat with each other in a more intimate group setting, face-to-face via video recording. We love to show each other our pets, our gardens, or anything anything else you'd like to share. And just a reminder that the higher the tier you sign up under, the more rewards you get, because you get all of the rewards of the tiers below it. You can upgrade or downgrade or even cancel at any time. So to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast.
Yeah, and there are additional ways to support us and our podcast that don't cost you any money. If you do listen on Spotify, please give us a star rating. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a written review. We love sharing those on our Instagram. And if you're on Instagram, we would really appreciate any reposts or blurbs about our podcast. And make sure to tag us at Magnolia Street Podcast in your feed, posts, stories, and share us with your practical magic loving friends.
All right, we have some merch, so definitely check out our Teespring shop. The link is over in our Instagram bio and our link tree. And then also, if you guys want to weigh in on all the topics we're talking about on the show, magnoliastreetpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I know Spotify, if you guys listen to us on Spotify, they have the little questionnaires, the little things at the bottom of the episode. So if you want to weigh in, hit us up through there. We love reading those fun little tidbits. Sometimes people have some fun little things to say about the episodes. So we do read those.
We have new episodes every Friday. Until next week, I'm Christina.
I'm Justina, and we'll see you next What?
Do it.
We'll see you next time. I like how you took the low.
Yeah.
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street where the wisteria grow wild? At the house of magic and mystery, so would you go down to Magnolia Street?
Where are you? Come back, child. Come back to Jesus. There you are.
I was talking. I didn't realize that I was muted and my video wasn't on. I'm just having a conversation with myself, and then I hear you go, "Come back, child. Come back to Jesus." Sorry about that.